and I will pass it off to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining the Tuesday, December 8th, Commerce Township, regular Township Board meeting. If we could call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Let's start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
which
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody.
We're
So
getting better.
I see we have Molly Phillips, the treasurer, Melissa Creech, our township clerk. I see Dave Campbell, our planning director, fire chief Jim Dundas, trustee Bob Burkheiser, attorney Phil Atkins. There's Vanessa Magner, trustee. Good evening. Mark Stacy from the DDA. Hans Rentroth from township attorney as well. Mark Schrader, the maintenance director. Jay James, building director. George Weber, trustee. Benjamin Sobrowski, our IT director. And I see Janet's name. I don't see their picture, but our finance and IT. And I think I got everybody. Nope, Rick Sowell. I didn't say Rick. Hi, Rick, Commerce trustee.
Welcome, Larry.
Everybody. If I miss you, I apologize. This is my first meeting, so I have a little bit of butterflies going on here. So hopefully we'll make this through nice and easy.
We'll help you get through it, Larry.
All right, great. So the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from the regular November 17th, 2020 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Philip, second.
Support.
Magner.
Oh, Magna, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Magner Sobel.
Sowell. Okay, roll call vote.
Magner,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Great. So tonight, presentations, we have the presentation for the Water Resource Commissioner's budget. I believe we have folks on from the Water Resource Commissioner's office. Is somebody who is going to present that to the board tonight?
Should be Raphael and Amy. I saw both of them on.
Yeah, Raphael's going to make the presentation tonight. Raphael, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. Just took me a minute to unmute. I didn't know we were going so soon. So, well, thank you for getting us out of the way quickly. Raphael Chirola with Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner's Office. What we have before you today is our proposed budget for 2020, which we're actually already into for this fiscal year. Our fiscal year starts on October 1st. And most of the systems we operate, we actually start budgeting for a July 1st fiscal year to coincide with a GLWA fiscal year. Commerce is a little different in that your water usually is effective October 1st as far as rates go, and your sewer rates are usually effective January 1st, at least according to your webpage. Yeah, sometimes it changes, but that's most of the time. So what we're proposing overall is that, let me bring up the files. On the sewer side for rate required revenue, we're talking about compared to the 2020 budget, we're talking about going from almost $4 million for rate required revenue up to 4.6. Now I know that's a little almost like 16% increase from the budget for 2020. However, when we look at the actuals that we've had for 2019 and 2020, your O&M budgets for 2019, the actuals for 2019 were 3.8 million, and your O&M for 2020 actuals were 4.2. We had budgeted 3.8, but due to some, first of all, we had some labor increases for our union workers, but also for Commerce Township, we had an increase in services provided related to SAW grant activities. So that's we feel is gonna go forward into the 2021 fiscal year. And we're proposing a budget on the sewer side of $4.3 million for O&M. And then we're also adding, we also have a subcategory that we call, that's off by itself, called major maintenance. For 2020, we had budgeted $500,000 for revenue, and for the upcoming year, we're making that $750,000, also related to additional services related to the SAW grant activities that were performed for Commerce Township. And that's pretty much it for Commerce. The overall budget, I believe, is around, compared to the 2020 actuals, for the 2021 budget is about 2% change. So even though we were pretty far off as far as our 2020 budget goes to our 2020 actuals, we feel that the 2021 budget is pretty close to the actuals we've experienced in both 2019 and 2020. If you have any questions for specifics, please, we have staff on hand, Brian Coburn. We have also the engineer for the sewage plant online, Mary, and Drew's also should be on the call. So if
I have some questions. This is Bob Burkeiser. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Is that a yes? Okay. So on the water side, I don't know, we like to have, or recently we've been getting, whether it's the fire department or whatever, is more of a replacement plan. And I mean, it looks like it's wrapped in here, but do you guys have a specific plan on when we're replacing and repairing certain things? So the first one that pops up on the water side is the hydrant inspection. It says that, you know, we're increasing the budget to inspect more hydrants, and we like to do them every, I'll say, I think it was every, well, I have 1/5, so I'm going to say every 5 years. So does that mean that that's 50,000 or 47,000 is to inspect 50, however, 50, 20% of our hydrants? Is that what that is? Is that how we're planning this?
All right, I'll let Amy answer that with the water side. Amy, if you could jump in and answer his question on the water. I'll try to talk about the water side in a minute here as far as the broader stuff. But
so was that, you only talked sewer? I can jump to that if that's what you want.
that's what we were just talking about, but it's up to you how you want to approach it.
Okay, then we'll jump to sewer then. I'm sorry, I thought you were saying it was roughly the whole same thing. The sewer is even more so because of so many things are old, at least. I mean, this is the first time I remember reading, whether we've gotten it, and I'll just say my fault for not seeing it, but that most of our equipment, it looks like, is coming up on its life expectancy. So on the sewer side, is there a plan to replace, I guess I'll say replace all these lift things and all the stuff you have in there? I saw in the final that it's roughly $500,000 or $600,000 a year to repair and keep them running. But at what point do we decide to replace things? I mean, fire trucks, we replace them every so often. How long past the life expectancy before we have to replace stuff? Do you understand what I mean? And it's more than just, I'll say, the lift things. It's got to do with valves, and it's got to do with all sorts of stuff. At one point we were inspecting, I don't know if Jason might have to help me a little. I can't remember if it was a third of our pipes for, hydrogen sulfide degradation, or if it was 20%. We're doing it every 5 years. I saw that we were trying to do more of that, yet we only did 7%. So it's more of that upkeep and the repair. What I really am concerned about is having something break. We only have $100,000 in the emergency fund. So it's that type of stuff that I'm concerned. And I want to make sure and feel comfortable that we're on top of all that. Okay, I'll stop.
I don't know if you want to answer that, Brian.
Yeah, I can. I was waiting for you to answer, but I can answer. On the sewer side, again, my name's Brian Coburn. I'm chief engineer over the sewer systems for the WRC. And on the sewer side, what we've done is through the SAW grant, working with Giffords Webster, the system's been inventoried. So we've seen the pipes, we've inspected the pipes, we've seen a lot of the facilities, all the lift stations have been assessed. So we're at a point right now where we know the base condition of just about everything in your system. So from there, then we can start to build an asset management plan that we can implement over the next 20 plus years to start doing the replacements that are necessary. And one of the examples of that is in the report that we gave you on the sewer, table 4, I think it is, shows kind of the cycle of, table 5 shows recycle or rebuild, replace, how that works in the system. So we've done that for each one of these different types of assets. And we continue to work with Giffords Webster on doing things at the right time and to budget for those.
So some of our stuff was commented is basically the end of its life expectancy. Matter of fact, I think in here without actually, I mean, I know I circled it, but without looking for it, is at the end of the life expectancy. So how can we have a replacement plan that's going out from now for 20 years when these things are almost done? Does that make sense or no?
It does make sense. Yeah. So what we're doing right now is we're building towards what that eventual revenue is going to need to be to take care of all those things. You can't do everything at once, right? So right now we know of a lot of things that need to be taken care of. And so those are in the 5-year plan. And then there's other things that are in the further plan that will be addressed through asset management.
So this is George Weber, and maybe if I can pile on to Bob's. So in going through what you've laid out here, basically in tables 4 and in tables 5, I think what we're trying to understand is not building a revenue plan to cover this, but what are the costs that we need to be able to see and understand, and how do we look at whether it's at a minimum of 5 years for each of these categories and line items, and we can get as granular probably as you need to be to say, here's our expectation on the costs associated with maintaining the system by category for a 5-year look. That way I feel like we kind of get surprised. So we have these meetings periodically, once or twice a year, and it's, here's the numbers or here's the forecasts we have, and then here's what we need in terms of for budgeted. But we don't get a lot of continuity from not only looking backwards, but also looking forwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're trying to get there. That's where we're trying to get to, is to understand what's necessary so we can budget appropriately and not have surprises. That's something we don't want.
So do you have a timeline then when we'd be able to see something like that?
So we're going to come back earlier than this year to do budget for 2022. So I would anticipate as part of that or in advance of that, you will see something from us that discusses what that looks like. And I'll work with Jason on that to better understand what you guys are looking for.
So
we'll see our budget season. We would like to see that in the May-June timeframe. So put that on your calendar. I mean, okay. I feel the same as George. I mean, I'm looking at something here that says 1,000. We have 1,000 home grinder pumps that are ending their life expectancy. Do we pay for these grinder pumps? I thought this was a homeowner thing. House pumps. If we are responsible for them, and all of a sudden we have 1,000 of them that are going to potentially start going out. I mean, it just seems like there's a heck of a lot of stuff here that could start failing in the next 5 years. And we're putting together a 20-year plan for stuff that's potentially could be done in 5 years. And we don't want to have to come in to the residents and say, oh, all our stuff's really old. We need a 20% increase in your sewer fees and your water fees or whatever. We try to plan out, I'll say hopefully better than that. But so that's what we're working on. So, we'd like to see something of a replacement plan. I mean, I'm not in your shoes, no idea how long it takes, but if you've seen everything, I mean, if that's something we could get by the May timeframe, our budget stuff, we start planning that stuff in the June, July. And we start getting our water person and sewer person starts evaluating all our stuff by then too.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Raphael, I have maybe two questions for you. So the first is you made a comment that we're proposing quite a bit more 2021 versus 2020 actual. And one of the line items was union contract labor increase. Wouldn't we have known what that, well, one, can you tell us what that increase was? And two, wouldn't that have been something that we would have known about?
That was negotiated and took effect in like October, November of 2019. There were discussions, and it wasn't. It was all based on a kind of a job study that Oakland County did. All right, and they went, and each specific job title, they determined what salaries needed to be adjusted. I should say wages needed to be adjusted for these union contractors. I should say union employees, based on what the going rates were in the region. Okay, so certain areas got higher or below average increases. We didn't know when we were budgeting 2019 that this was coming in 2019. We were budgeting 2019 in the middle of 2018, early 2000. We're doing your budgets. The first look we're doing at your budgets are usually occurring in the winter of any given year.
So these increases,
it's always a year. It's always 6 to 9 months out of sync with when the year takes place, and we didn't know they were going to settle that quickly.
and so how much was that?
Like I said, it depends on the job titles.
So raw numbers.
Maybe 8 to 10% overall on the union titles.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and some of them, especially in the more specific, more specialized fields, were on the higher end.
So how long? So was that a mid contract, or was this an expiration or pending expiration of the contract that the negotiations took place? And kind of where I'm going is, how long are we locked into those labor costs now?
I would have to get back to you with that, because I'm not really in the HR business. So I'll get you the, I'll come back, I'll reply to this in an email or something and let you know how long those contracts are in place for.
Because kind of what we're looking at and talking about the assets would be the exact same look. So if you've got a 3-year or a 5-year union contract, then we have some level of certainty on what our labor costs would be. And that's one more line item that we can see to help us understand what total costs are going to be going forward. The only other question I have is related to the SAW grant activities, and maybe I didn't understand what you were speaking to as it related to increases in the budget because of SAW grant activities.
All right, I'll let Brian get that one for me.
Sure. So the SAW grants happened in 2017 for commerce, and the SAW grant paid for a lot of the data collection, the inspection of the pipes, the inspection of the assets. What came after that then was taking all of this data that we had accumulated that we got through the SAW grant, and then putting together the plans that we're using of how we're going to manage these assets. So there's a lot of time that went into analyzing the data, prioritizing, and putting things, are we going to reinspect something in 3 years? Or are we going to go out and fix it now? Things like decisions that had to be made on each asset. So, yeah, I think I answered your question. I'm sorry if I didn't.
No, you did. Thank you.
Okay.
This is Rick Sobel, trustee. I'm not sure if this is a Jason, Jay, or whoever needs to answer this question, but as far as when a grinder pump fails, who's, for both residential and or for business, who's paying for that?
Comes out of the sewer fund. So as residents pay their quarterly bills, it builds up the maintenance fund for the grinder pumps. And then as a grinder pump call comes in and the county has to go out and service it, they bill out of that fund.
And does that include all the labor too?
I believe so, but Brian could probably answer if I'm incorrect. I believe that does, yes.
Yeah, I believe all the costs are covered.
So Jay, does
So
the
do we have a life?
resident pay up front for the grinder to have it installed?
The resident, yeah, when it gets installed, the resident pays for the pump and pays for the installation of the pump and everything associated with getting the pump hooked up.
And so we get all the legacy costs, if you want to think of it that way?
Well, they're paying,
or are they paying per month?
They're paying quarterly, their sewer bills, which includes a maintenance portion to it.
Okay.
So let me on my question. So it's, do we know on our inventory what year are the grinder pumps were installed, what the life expectancy is, so that we can then budget for replacement over a certain period of time to make sure we are allocating enough cost in our sewer rates to replace those over time?
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what the county is proposing. Is so they're estimating you got slightly over 1,000 pumps. They're recommending that we start replacing 45 a year as time goes on. And I know that the county has all the records of the dates they were installed, last time it might have been serviced, or the last time it might have actually been replaced. Yep. So I haven't spoke to them specifically about the program, but I'm assuming the 45 pumps are going to be the oldest 45 pumps that we have in our system. We're going to start replace those, and then next year I would expect another 45 pumps are going to get replaced.
So on page 5, it says.
Hold on, Bob. So on that, with that, they're our asset, correct?
Actually, that's a question for Phil, because the homeowner purchases the pump. The homeowner purchases the pump, and then we maintain it for them.
But we're not doing routine maintenance, right? Or are we? It's not a pump. It's not like it's in the house, is it, or is it?
No.
No, it's outside the house. But as the pumps, and they do fail or malfunction, and when they malfunction, the alarm goes off and the county gets called and they come out and basically pull the pump and put a new one in and then repair the old pump if possible.
Is there ever a time where the homeowners at fault, like they dumped a bunch of fish tank gravel down their grinder pump, or too much grease or whatever, if they've been warned about it before and that's why it fails? Do they have to pay the cost to do it if it fails too early because of misuse?
On those occasions where it comes up, yes, the county will notify me and then we'll look at each case by case, but those are actually rare. We tell every resident when they get a grinder pump, we go over the do's and don'ts. We give them a list of what should and shouldn't put down your drain. I explain to them all that, if it malfunctions and the county comes out and finds that it malfunctioned because they were pouring grease down the drain, for instance, the county will come out and repair it, and then we would warn the homeowner. And if it happens again and the county's got to go out there, the county will notify me and ask if they should back charge that time to that homeowner. So it hasn't happened a lot. It's happened occasionally, but I wouldn't say it very often.
How much is a grinder pump?
The pump itself is $3,100 right now. I think, well, we buy the whole station, so I shouldn't say that. The whole station is like around $3,100. The pump itself, we buy, Commerce buys stations total with the whole outside shell, the electronics and everything. The pump itself, I would have to find out what that cost is. Brian, would you know off the top of your head?
It's a couple $100, just
I was going to say it's $600 or $700 at the most. I wanted to say.
So this maintenance, maybe adding to Rick's question, and we'll just pick grinder pumps since there's 1,000 of them out there. When we're talking about this replacement strategy of 45 a year, we don't have to replace the whole unit or the electronics with the box. Is this literally just replacing the pump inside the well?
Correct. So they
Okay.
basically go out, pull that pump out, drop a new one down. And unless there's obviously an issue with the control panel or electronics, we would have to look at that. But I believe the replacement program is going to be just pulling the pumps, putting new ones in. And then the county has maintenance guys that are certified to repair the pumps. So I'm assuming the ones they're pulling, they're going to look at to see if there's possibility of rehabbing it and using it as a replacement pump in an emergency basis to keep their inventory full.
So Jay, I mean, page 5 says we have 1,000 of them put in before 2003. So, and it's a 20-year thing. How many a year do we put in?
We probably put
Roughly.
in 60 to 80 on a good year. I'd say this year it was around 60 to 70 because we had one subdivision that went in that had them all. But I would say normally it's around 50 to 60 existing houses to get them. So
Okay.
four a month.
So we've got 1,500 out there, and 1,000 of them are looking to be replaced soon. Okay.
Now, I'm assuming, and Jason, you might want to speak into this, that this plan or whatever the county's plan that goes in, that stuff's passed on to our rate consultant when they look at the rates. So I believe that it's actually included, some of that's included into the rate study.
Yes, absolutely. Part of what she takes is information from Molly. The other part she takes is information from the county and Raphael and all their replacement costs that they're presenting now. And then the other part is capital improvements that we do on the system. Those are projects that I would bring to you to present. So she takes all three of those into account to establish what the rates should be.
So what we're seeing tonight, she has had already when we had those rate studies done.
She didn't have this one, she had last year's. So we will provide this to her and make sure that her assumptions were correct. And then we will be bringing that back to present a fee ordinance update based on what she finds.
Going forward, if we have a 5-year plan / forecast, then that should, one, we have some figures that we should try to hold ourselves accountable to on the cost side. But 2, that would make her forecast going forward that much more accurate and valuable.
Agreed.
So I have a question.
If I'm hearing you guys correctly, I think what you want to see is a replacement schedule for all items in the system. So that we can plan out over a rolling 5-year period what you expect to see replaced, and then next year they can come back and say, all right, we expected to replace A, B, and C, but we only actually had to do B and C, so therefore we're going to move item A the following year. Is that what you're looking for?
It's broader than that. On the asset side, yes, I would say so, but we would also be looking at what do we expect our labor costs to be? What do we expect any new projects to be? What do we expect any contingency for failures? So really a comprehensive plan that says, here's how we're going to get to this $4.3 million. And here's what that's going to look like over at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, and I'd like to have like an address list of, every grinder pump we have right now, and then obviously on a go forward basis, everyone that's being added. So we have the year, so we can try to amortize this, so we can do our own forecasting for, how much money we need to build in for replacement.
Yeah, that list to you, like, absolutely.
So how much of your presentation have we usurped, Raphael?
I have another question for whoever wants to field it. So when we've had Dawn Lund come in and do our rate studies, she's had actual for 1 year and she's had budget for the next. And just looking at the comparisons that I did between the budgets and the actuals when I just about had a heart attack a few months ago. If she's looking at budget and we're blowing the budget by 32% on cost in any given year, and we don't get a heads up on that, that seems bad. if I get a budget to actual result at the end of the year where we were gonna spend, $3.8 million and we spend 4.3, that's a lot that goes into the rate study. That's information we should have before you go over budget. And what the plan, why you're going over and what the plan is to stop it, not just, oops, we went over budget. So can we get some kind of budget to actual comparison, line by line that we can look at reasonably and try to, it can't always just be, well, the SAW grant made us go over budget, or there has to be a way to control the costs. And if we're not good enough about estimating the budget, then that needs to be an additional step.
We can provide, instead, in addition to the quarterly report you currently receive, we can provide you a quarterly report that actually shows you the budget and the actuals side by side, if that's something you would like to see in addition to the one we usually send out.
Yes.
That would help.
It's not a big deal. So yeah, that exists, and we're more than willing to provide it to you.
Okay, great. So then what would the procedure be to figure out why we're dramatically, obviously I'm concerned about being over budget. And I'm thinking that most of the times I've seen us be under budget, it's because we didn't do a certain project or a certain cleaning thing or whatever in 1 year, and we're pushing it forward to the next, and I get those. But what would be the process then if we start to go astray to get it back on track, or at least have us be aware of it ahead of time so that we can say, yeah, that's fine, continue, or no, put a stop to it until we figure out, if there's something else we can do.
Well, we could set up meetings between yourselves and ourselves on a quarterly basis if you want to go down that road, where we review the budgets to actuals every quarter. If that's what you guys want to do, we can do it. It's up to you.
Well, I think I would add, I think yes, since the dollars we're talking about, but two, not just budget to actual, but budget to what you think the full year forecast is going to look like. So if we had on a quarterly basis, if we had a report from you that said, here's what our actual is versus budget, and here's what our forecast is for the rest of this year, then again, if we get that in a report format, then we can determine if we need to have a meeting or not to discuss any mitigation actions.
Okay.
At least let's get a head start on this, and then maybe, we can spread it out. So maybe twice a year or once a year, once we get a good feel for this.
Well, for initially quarterly, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there an appropriate amount that should be in our emergency fund? In some of these things that said, okay, it should be 3 months worth, it should be whatever. And I see $100,000 in our sewer one and $1 million in our water one. What's your thoughts? I guess I'll say.
That is, everybody kind of struggles with that one. It all depends. There's different approaches that were used. A lot of that was established before I got here to work for WRC, but some things are based on, like a critical, what would Commerce Township feel would be an appropriate level? Like, do you want to have it where it's like, if this level of failure occurred, we have cash on hand to pay for it instead of going to a bond market to bond for this particular project? Or we want to bond it, but we want enough money on hand to pay for the costs that would occur in the first 6 or 7 months prior to us being able to actually go to market to get bonds to cover a major failure in the system. Those are the kind of questions you probably want to ask when considering where do you want your reserve to be for an emergency.
So when it
Jason?
says we have 10 million undesignated, what does that mean?
That means it hasn't been specifically designated to one of the other three net asset accounts, which would be major maintenance, emergency, or capital.
So that's paying for water or sewer or whatever.
Yeah, depending on which fund it is. It's
Right.
additional monies available within that fund.
So that fund, Molly, I believe is where you can draw to make your treatment plant payments on the bond.
Yep.
Yes. And I believe that Dawn Lund actually looks at the county's reserve balances when she does her rate study to see if they are in line with.
Well,
industry standards.
she's the one that holds us to a certain percentage, 1.2, 1.4. I don't remember what the numbers are. And I assume it's that fund. So
That percentage that she holds us to in the reserves is the debt service coverage ratio. So,
okay.
but the way the total reserves, so the $11.8 million or $11.9 million that's in there is, I would think that somebody somewhere has a formula where they have an average of, this is how much it costs us. There's, one major break a year and it costs us $350,000 to get it fixed. Then that should be in your emergency maintenance fund. I don't know what those numbers should be. And I don't know if Dawn has, if some of these numbers haven't changed in a long time, then maybe that's something that needs to be looked at, and we should be, maybe have the capital reserve is for planned capital expenditures. Major maintenance is kind of for planned major maintenance. It's the emergency maintenance one that looks, to me, it looks
Scary.
low, but I don't know where the number came from originally. So.
Right.
But is that, Jason, is that something that Dawn actually, does she look at just the reserves in total, or does she look at them as they're split by what they're supposed to be used for?
I think one of the numbers she looks at is the minimum cash reserves you have, and that calculates the debt ratio. But yes, we should talk with the county about what a minimum emergency fund should be that they put into the numbers there.
I almost feel like it should be slowly increased. But I also am a little nervous with the increases that are coming now. So, but anyway, okay.
I think that's something Jason and I can talk to Dawn about to see if there is an industry standard that they like to see, 6 months operating expense in that fund or whatever number that might be, and see if there's a percentage or a number that we can come back to you and back to the county with on what we want to see in that fund.
This is Trustee Magner. What is the percentage of the wastewater treatment plant that is currently being used?
I believe we're using 2.5 MGD is the average flow per day, and the capacity of the treatment plant is 8 MGD.
And was there talks in the past about renting out or leasing out, I don't know what the right word is, to other communities?
I believe we were talking about looking at other communities. It would involve some major infrastructure to do, and it would also take up some of the ultimate capacity that is ultimately reserved for Commerce Township residents. But it was a discussion in the past. We could look at it again. Some neighboring communities that might be looking at expansions or looking for a place to send their sewage.
Yeah, we talked, Vanessa, to other communities. They've called us to see if there was possibilities of tying into our system, and we always look at that. When our system originally got started, we designed based on what was then the average usage per person per household. And so as time has progressed and we got a lot of water saving features, and each house uses less water today than they used to use 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That means that we may have extra capacity in our system. So I know we've worked with the county before, and the county has looked at a regional system instead of our system more regionally to see if there are ways, and we're always open to listening to other communities if they need capacity. Obviously, the more users we can get in our plant, it benefits us on numerous different levels.
What's our projected need if everybody was on sewer?
I believe isn't it 5 million gallons for commerce?
Yeah,
And
for
3
commerce.
million for 3 million for White Lake.
We also take White Lake's sewage.
All of theirs, or just, I thought we only took part of theirs.
Well, it's only part of
All
White
theirs
Lake, but
is
they
on
have, I
sewer.
believe our contract is for up to 3 million gallons from White Lake.
So that's included though in the 2.5 that Jason referenced already. So ballpark, we're at 30% capacity. And is it feasible that we would get with everything that Jay just went through? So I guess it sounds like if we're at 30%, we know we have some more, we know we have a lot of room for people that are on septic that'll be eventually moving to sewer. But what would a projection look like if all the stars aligned?
So are you saying if every parcel in Commerce Township connected to sewer, what would we use?
Yeah, or say 80%, if 80% of them did, are we still well below our?
That's 4 million.
I believe we're below what we originally designed the plant for. How much low we would have to run the numbers.
But I just think if we had some kind of a safety net like that, then we would know whether it really is feasible for us to contract, to Vanessa's point, with another community, or if somebody said yes, then we could say yes up to, this amount.
Between Jason and I, we could come up with some quick numbers to kind of give you a rough estimate. Originally, when it was done, it wasn't me, but I know somebody went through parcel by parcel through zoning districts and said, all right, if it's zone business, you're going to anticipate this much flow, et cetera. Without going parcel by parcel, Jason and I can come up with a pretty quick estimate for you.
Can I interject here?
I'm sorry?
I wondered if I could interject something.
Absolutely.
Bill Atkinson. I think this is a very dangerous place to go. We applied for and got a permit for 8 million gallons because that was the amount that, following study, was the minimum amount required to service both Commerce Township and the parts of White Lake that we would serve. And we did it all at once rather than building on an as-needed basis because of the special difficulty associated with the permitting of this plant, because it discharges into a stream that has an endangered species in it. And the amount of effort, both in terms of time and money to get a permit at all, was extraordinary. And the thought was, we better get this plant built or we will be in danger at some point in the future of not being able to provide needed services to our residents. A number of years ago, our office and Giffords Webster presented what we called it Sewer 101, but it was a lengthy multi-hour presentation about the history of the system and how we got to the point where we had to make that decision and the necessity to very carefully protect that capacity. So it may be time to do another version of that, but I would just say that this is a complicated area to discuss. I know it's arisen in the context of this budget presentation, but it's an enormous, it is something with enormous ramifications. And if you're seriously considering going down that road, or at the time a request is made that would make you seriously consider going down that road, there's a lot of information you need before you should make it. And I think Rick has been there for the whole ride and could probably back up what I just said.
I'm probably the only one that knows what a red-sided dace is, besides you.
No, they're not
It's
there
okay.
anymore. So Phil, do we have a contract then with White Lake? Meaning, and I guess where I was going was, let's say we contracted with Novi, they hooked up and we ran it. and then we realize we're getting to the extent of our limit, can we cut them out of the contract?
No, they have a guaranteed right to a certain portion of the capacity in that plan.
So you can't ever cut them out or write the contract as such. So it's not like you could say with 5 years notice, we're telling you build your own plan or whatever.
No, but there's one.
Okay, so once
there's
they're in,
some-
they're in.
They're in, but there is a provision in the agreement, subject to a caveat that was needed to satisfy the MDQ at the time, that does give Commerce Township priority over capacity to the extent that's needed. That became less important after we got permitted for 8 million gallons. But in the early days when the actual treatment capacity was less, there was at least the theoretical risk that you could end up with more demand than you had capacity.
So maybe can I suggest that maybe that is a separate presentation or educational service you can provide Phil, and maybe move on to the rest of the presentation for the team.
I believe we still have that sewer one-on-one presentation that we could send to the board. Rick probably might still have it, but the rest of you probably haven't seen it. But we'll look to see if we can find that and at least get you the history of the plant so you know where we're coming from with some of that stuff Phil was just talking about.
Thank you.
Are we back to Raphael?
He's still
If
there.
you want, are you ready to move on to water, or do you want to continue to discuss sewer?
No, water.
All right, so water's a lot nicer as far as
Yeah.
things go. 2019, we had water purchases in actuals of 3.6 million and O&M of 1.1 million. In 2020, we had actuals of 3.7 million and an O&M for water and O&M of 1 million. And the budget for 2020 for water purchases was 3.7 million. And these are rough numbers, obviously, and an O&M budget of 1.1 million. What we are proposing for 2021 is 3.7 million for water purchase, $1.1 million O&M budget, and then a little increase in the major maintenance category. Overall, it's a 1.9% increase over the existing budget. And I'll leave it at that and open it up to questions.
Raphael, I just have maybe a procedural question. So as we're going through the year and the county recognizes that we're now going over budget, do we get, who gets to make that decision that it's okay to go over budget?
That's up to you as it's your system. If you want to set in place rules that are procedures that say, hey, we're going over budget, and you say, well, if you're going over budget, let's say it's quarterly meetings, because that's what we just discussed, right? Let's say we're going over budget and we have a quarterly meeting and you say, hey, we're going to make a decision on how we resolve this issue.
Okay,
Right.
so right now there isn't a
There isn't
procedure.
that is not in place currently.
Okay. So I think our starting off, maybe hopefully it'll be less frequent, but starting off quarterly, I think that would be helpful for us. So at least because right now we're not part of the process. We're part of the process after the fact. And I think becoming part of the process during the process will be helpful for all of us.
Well, I hope so, because maybe it'll make these a little less
Painful.
well, I wouldn't go painful, but challenging. How's that?
Good word.
Any other questions? I know later on we will be voting for the budget underneath new business. So appreciate your presentation there.
Oh, no problem.
All right.
Actually, first customer that we've suggested this quarterly process to. Might be a winner for other customers. So we'll see what happens with that.
Appreciate
good
your time, Raphael. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Appreciate it. Okay, that is all we have for presentations. Next, item number 1 is approval of the agenda.
Motion to
So-
approve the agenda, and I have 4 add-ons.
Okay,
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Well, they're simple.
They're easy.
Under item 4, board appointments, letter F, George for Planning Commission, G, Bob for Parks, H, Vanessa for Library, and I, myself, for ZBA.
Is that the 4?
Yes.
Good. So I have a question, and I don't care if we leave it in the consent or we pull it out, but it has to do with the budget. So if we pull it out of consent, we could do it, or I can bring up my issue. It's not going to change the budget, so I have no problem bringing it up under other matters, whatever you guys want. I mean, the budget's the budget, so I feel comfortable leaving it in the consent, but I do think we need to talk about it in other matters. So however you guys want to do it.
Well, when we get to consent, you can always pull it out as consent.
Or else we'll
Well,
vote
that's
on
part of
it
the
before
agenda.
we get to other matters.
Yeah.
all right, can I get a second to Rick's motion with the additions, 4 additions?
Support.
Support.
Who was that?
Was that Rick and Vanessa?
George, I think George got it first.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Roll call.
Stovall,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Gray.
Okay, public comments. If we can open up the lines, Alex, if we have anybody in the public that would like to make a comment, other than what we're going to be discussing next item 3, the public hearing, at this time, we can raise your hand by hitting *9, I believe it is.
Yes. So *9 and then *6 to unmute.
And we will ask you to please say your name, state your address, and we'll give you 2 minutes to speak. This is not a question and answer, but just for you to let the township board hear your comments.
So callers, press *9 if you would like to make a comment. And neither caller has raised their hand.
Okay. Let's give it a couple more seconds because I know if you're watching on YouTube, it's about a 40-second delay. Been there a couple times. So nobody else.
Nope, still no changes.
All right, I'm going to close the public comments. Item 3, public hearings. We're going to discuss the confirming special assessment for role for special assessment district design and special project number 46. This has been discussed in previous meetings.
You want to open a pub?
Yep, I was just going to, sorry, Hans, I was going to do it. So I'd like to open this up to the public for any comments.
Once again, callers at *9. Still no change. Neither caller has raised their hand.
Okay, then I am going to close the public comments. Can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the resolution confirming special assessment role for special assessment district designated special projects number 46.
Okay, by Philip, second.
Support, Burkheiser.
Burkheiser, roll call.
Phillips,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Weber,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Stovall,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay, item number 4. First, we're going to do some board appointments. Number A, Arlene DePaula, reappointment to the Board of Review for a 2-year term, which will expire on December 31st, 2024, expires in 2022. Arlene has been a member of this board since 2007. Can we roll call these at the end, or do we have to do individually?
We'll do them individually.
Okay. Motion to
So,
accept.
Larry, I have one question on that. So and I don't know if the Board of Review is different, so this is the first time I think that I've seen reappointments for the Board of Review, but on all others, we have a percentage of meetings attended. So again, if review is different.
Can I interject on that one?
Yes, please do.
To be quite honest with you, I did the memos this time, so they didn't have any percentages in them. Sorry. I can get those.
So
numbers
Rick, are
for
you the one on here?
No. So the Board of Review only meets a couple times a year. They're not like regular meetings.
And George, they meet in March, July, and December. 3 times a year.
And they're
Rick, are you the one sitting on it or no?
No, none of us are.
None of us.
So none of us there?
No.
Okay. Isn't there special training for this?
Yeah, they have.
Usually the realtors.
Really?
So I'll make a motion to approve the reappointment for 2 years for Arlene DePaula.
Support.
Okay.
Five support. Roll call.
Weber,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay, item B,
Weber.
Maria Kaufman. Again, board review 2-year term. This term will expire on December 31st, 2024. Maria has been part of this board review since 2018. I get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Support.
Noel Magner, roll call.
Sobel,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Gray.
Aye. Okay, C, Diane Wilson. Appointment, reappointment for the board review, 2-year term, due to expire on December 31st, 2024. Diane was just appointed this year, so she's a newbie to the board review. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Support.
That's all. And Magner.
Sobel,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Item D, Barbara Rossman. Reappointment to the board of review for a 2-year term due to expire on December 31st, 2024. Barbara has been part of the board of review since 1986.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Support.
Roll call.
Creech, aye. Sobel,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Item E, Patricia Rusnell. She has been board review for a 2-year term. This term could expire on December 31st, 2024. Patricia has been a member of this board since 1996.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Support.
Mayor Burkheiser.
Sure.
Magner,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
And we are going to be looking for one more person for the water review. We're one person short. Okay, F, Mr. Weber for the
So-
planning committee.
I'll make a motion to reappoint George Weber to the Planning Commission, and I believe the term would expire on November 20th, 2024.
Yes.
Okay, second.
Support.
Support.
Oh, sorry. Roll
You
call.
don't have a choice, by the way, George.
Roll
It's all
call.
good.
Yep. Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye. Item G, Bob Burkheiser.
Make a motion to appoint Bob Burkheiser to reappoint to the Parks and Rec for a term to expire November 20th, 2024.
Support.
Support.
Support Phillips. Roll call.
Sobel,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Burkheiser,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. H, Vanessa Magner to the library board.
Motion to appoint Vanessa Magner to the Library Advisory Board for a term to expire on November 20th, 2024.
Support.
Support.
Burkheiser. Roll call.
Sobel,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Magner,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. And item I, Mr. Rick Sobel for the ZBA board.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Rick Sobel to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term scheduled to expire on 11/20/2024.
Support.
Phillips.
Support.
Roll call.
Weber,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Gray.
Okay, that should be everything for item 4. Moving on to item 5, Oak Hill Site Condominium. Mr. Campbell, did you want to go through this? Present?
Sure, I'll introduce this, and then I know the development team represented by Pulte Homes and their engineer, Mike Knowles, wants to make a presentation as well. This is a site condominium proposed at the southeast corner of Glengarry and Wixom Roads. There's about 32 undeveloped acres at that southeast corner. The property is zoned R1B, which is one of our 4 single-family zoning districts. This property has a little bit of history in that it was previously submitted for and approved for a single-family site condominium back in 2006, consisting of 78 single-family lots. That development was going to be known as Commerce Point. It was reviewed and approved by the township, but then the recession of 2007, 2008 hits, and that project never commences, and the project remains vacant to this day. Pulte's proposal is to acquire it from its current owner and develop it with the same number of units, 78 single-family homes. But they're proposing to do it through the township's residential open space cluster development option. So what that cluster option allows the developer to do is develop the property with the same number of units that would be allowed under the R1B zoning, but create lots that are smaller and clustered together in an effort to preserve some of the natural features and natural vegetation on the site and to provide more open space in return for doing the smaller lots. So in this case, R1B zoning would require lots that are 70 feet wide minimum and 12,000 square feet minimum. The Pulte proposal still shows the 70-foot wide lots, but they're reducing the depth so that rather than being 12,000 square feet, most of the lots are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,100 square feet. Again, with the trade-off being that all that space that's preserved from being included within each of the 78 single-family lots would instead be dedicated to open space within the development. The proposal for a site condominium is always a 2-step process. It has to go in front of the Planning Commission and then to the Township Board. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation. Township Board has the authority to make final approval. This proposal went in front of the Planning Commission at their meeting last night, where the Planning Commission recommended approval, unanimously recommended approval for the site condominium. And the way the calendar fell this month, the Planning Commission and the Township Board meetings are on back-to-back evenings. So Pulte is back in front of the Township Board this evening, hoping for final condominium site plan approval. The other approval that the developer got from the Planning Commission last night is special land use approval, because the cluster option is designated as a special land use in the R1B zoning district. So the Planning Commission, in addition to recommending condominium site plan approval, also approved the special land use for the cluster option. That included holding a public hearing. The Planning Commission got one public comment during that public hearing. That was one that was emailed in. It was from a resident of the neighborhood next door, which is the Hills of Loon Lake. And their request was that construction traffic be limited only to the proposed new entrance on the east side of Wixom Road, rather than construction traffic coming through the existing Hills of Loon Lake neighborhood, which this proposed new neighborhood would connect with via the existing Trillium Hills Drive. The developer is proposing pathways along the frontage of both Wixom Road and Glengarry Road, and internal sidewalks throughout the development. The development would be done in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be 38 homes. Phase 2 would be 40 homes. As part of phase 1, the new road would be cut in off of the east side of Wixom, and they would connect to the east side of this development with the stub road that is Trillium Hills Drive, thereby connecting it with the neighborhood next door, Hills of Loon Lake. As I mentioned, Mr. Knowles and Mr. Score on the call this evening. I know that Mr. Knowles would like to give a very similar presentation to the one he gave to the Planning Commission last night. So unless anyone has any specific questions for me, I'd be happy to turn it over to them.
Dave, maybe I can just make one comment as we're moving forward. Pulte came to the Planning Commission last year as well with a plan to put 91 homes on this property. At that time, the Planning Commission turned it down as we believed it was too dense a proposal. We also gave them a number of suggestions that if they were going to come back to us, what we would be looking for. And to the credit of Mr. Knowles and Mr. Score, they not only took each of our recommendations, they also exceeded them in some cases. Hence the unanimous approval from the Planning Commission last night.
Yes, all of those things that Mr. Weber just said are true. They did take the Planning Commission's suggestion to reduce the density of their previous proposal from the 91 units that they were hoping to do in 2018 and reduce it to the 78 units, which are permitted by the current base zoning. So I know Mr. Knowles wants to make his presentation, and I think he's going to want to share the screen to do so. So if Alex could allow Mr. Knowles to share the screen, I think we could turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Happy to be here tonight. I'm going to share my screen with you now. Good evening. I will try to not be redundant with some of the information. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, for a fine summary. And I apologize in advance to Trustee Weber, who has seen this show before. The proposal is for Oak Hills, and my name is Mike Knowles. I am with the Umlor Group, representing Pulte Homes of Michigan tonight. As they mentioned in the history, this was approved in 2006 for 78 units, straight zoning R1B. This is the plan. This will give you a visual of what was approved in 2006. Still 78 lots, but what you can see in this red plan over here is to get the lot sizes required, the larger lot sizes required, they developed the lots wall to wall. They went from the Glengarry right away, the Wixom right away, the ITC corridor, all the way to the south property line. They have 3 detention basins in the plan down at the south end. And the only part of conservation was this little wetland, which happens to be on a lot, and there's no wetland buffer around it. So it was a wall-to-wall, 34 acres, 32.5 net acres, as Mr. Campbell pointed out, clearing job for the 78 units. As Trustee Weber pointed out, we came in 2018 and said we can do better and proposed a PUD. It had 91 lots and it had a whole lot of conservation. The problem there was that it was too many rooftops. And so the plan before you tonight combines the best of both plans. It's straight zoning, 78 lots, with a component of conservation, which I'll walk you through. The special land use for the cluster is what makes the conservation possible. Because for every 3,000 square feet that we take out of the red lots, we put into the green areas to conserve. And I'll show you how that works. So this is the plan before you tonight. And you can see the conservation areas and the open space areas are in green. And what that allows us to do is to preserve the view sheds along Glengarry Road. One of the neat things about Commerce Township is it does have a special feeling. There is a rural atmosphere in Commerce Township with almost 6,000 acres of parks between Commerce and the Proud Lake rec area. And so we wanted to also honor that by creating some open space buffers to preserve the view sheds. Also, connectivity is a huge goal of Commerce Township with multiple path networks. And we have a path network along the frontage of Glengarry that winds in and out and around some of the preserved trees, and a straight shot frontage path down Wixom Road where there are no trees along this frontage. We did a full tree survey on the entire site. So frontage paths, tree saves, on-site walks. We have sidewalks on both sides of the street, and we're able to create a buffer along the ITC corridor. There's a big power tension pole here that will be buffered by the preserved woods. And we also, you can see that same wetland I pointed out on the other slide is down here. It's a wooded wetland in a preserved area, nowhere near the wetland buffer, nowhere near the lots. As far as density, as I mentioned, this is a straight zoning proposal. We're proposing 78 units, which is permitted under the R1B zoning. Works out to 2.2 units per acre. As you can see, I've calculated the density for some of the adjacent developments. Hills of Loon Lake, which we're tying into through Trillium Drive, is just a hair more dense than what we're proposing. Everything else here is quite a bit more dense. As you know, Stratford Village and Commerce Meadows is right across the street at 5 and 5.8 units. And Greenbrier is almost twice as dense at 4.3. So we're using the straight zoning density. Within your packet tonight, you're approving the master deed and bylaws, which has been reviewed and recommended for approval by Mr. Rentrop. The reason I put this slide in, one of the items in the master deed and bylaws is the anti-monotony ordinance. You can see here, these homes have a similar shape, but a very different look. And that's the idea behind the anti-monotony ordinance, is some of them have full brick, some of them have stone, and some of the craftsman features with shake siding, brackets, columns, and some very nicely done stone, nice doors. Very handsome architecture. There's also a few pictures of the interiors. Pulte does a very fine job with their architecture. Some of the options you'll see on the site is a third car option that is going to be offered on these lots, as well as a number of different homes and elevations. I think we have 5 homes and each one has 4 or 5 different elevations, and that's how we're able to meet the anti-monotony requirements that are in the documents before you this evening. If I can walk you through exactly how we are handling the screening and the conservation, it all works together. So I'm going to build on our plan. So first, the blue areas. These are our conservation areas. There are over 400 preserved trees. I have a screenshot of the tree survey. It's tough to read on here, but you'll see on the next slide some samples, some examples of what is in that preserved tree area that we're talking about. Over 400 preserved trees. So these are not actual pictures from the site. They're stock photos, but these are actually trees from the tree survey along Glengarry Road. I picked Glengarry Road because it's the more narrow buffer of the preserved area, and I thought you'd like to know what's in there. There's a 20-inch black cherry. There are several groves of red maples, and they range between 6 and 16 inches. There's a 20-inch pignut hickory, and there's a 36-inch red oak. So these photos are all appropriate species and approximately the same size as we're talking about from the survey. So you can kind of get an idea of what it is we're trying to preserve here, to preserve that commerce feeling and add conservation to a straight zoning plan. Once we're done with the preservation areas, we also have some berming areas. Down here along about 25% along Wixom Road, we have an 8-foot berm here next to the entrance and a 10-foot berm south of the entrance, which will make a nice landscaping feature and add to the additional screening along with the blue conservation areas. Then, of course, there's added landscaping. And so what we've done is we've put a coniferous evergreen hedgerow all along Wixom Road and along the ITC corridor. The green circles you see there represent 145 evergreen trees, and the yellow circles represent our street trees, 184 trees. So you can see we've just about got the job surrounded. Couple more areas. We also have some plantings around the detention basin. There are 80 trees plus some shrubs that are accounted for in the detention screening area. And then we've got a handsome front entry feature, which adds another 33 trees, which you can kind of see represented here in orange. This is a picture, a rendering rather, of the a proposed entrance monument. You can see it here in plan view. There'll be a wall on each side of the entry as you pull in off of Wixom Road. And these are some of the additional trees that you see represented in orange on the slide next to you. So again, I appreciate the fact that the Planning Commission recommended us unanimously for approval for this 78-unit straight zoning project. And we would appreciate your support on the cluster option, that's the special use component, so that we're able to offer these additional points, the preservation, to be able to have it be a very nice looking, well-screened development. And Joe and I are both available to answer any of the questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll start off. I have some questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Bob Burkheiser. So is there only the one entrance coming in off of Wixom?
There's only one new curb cut out to Wixom or Glengarry, but we are also tying into Trillium Drive on the east side of the development. The neighbor that did write in for the public hearing last night, Miss Malone, requested that we use the Wixom Road entrance as a construction access only entrance, which we've agreed to do. And Ms. Malone actually wrote a follow-up email to Commerce Township today, thanking us for the presentation, and she liked what we did, and she was very supportive in her email for this project.
So my question surrounds, I can picture 5 o'clock coming down from the interstate and on Wixom. It backs up quite a bit there to the traffic light on Glengarry. So my question has more to do with people trying to get out of the development and make a left turn. So is there a traffic light going to go in? It seems like it's too close to the Glengarry one. So how is that being handled? And what did the Planning Commission say about that, George? I mean, I understand we did a road study, but we're doing a road study when we're not necessarily have full. So what would be the plan for that?
So Bob, one of the conditions that we put forward, so Pulte is going to do this in 2 phases. So as Dave mentioned, the first phase is 38 homes. Part of the condition for the approval was based on a second road study done in a post-COVID world prior to them starting phase 2 of that development. Just to make sure.
I saw that, but I guess what I would say is someone that drives that a lot or did drive that a lot, it backs up a bit there. Either, it splits and they're making a right or a left turn. It's a dead end. So I guess my question is, if it's backing up into the entrance area, what's the plan to get people to make a left turn or be able to make a left turn coming out of the development?
If they're making a left turn, and obviously the majority of people are probably going to be making left turns out of the development, the easy solution is to go along Trillium Drive to Glengarry, where it's going to be much easier to make a left-hand turn onto Glengarry, head west, and then turn south at Wixom at the traffic light.
So we're sending the development through another development to catch a traffic light onto Wixom.
Potentially.
Basically. Okay.
Another thing that was discussed in the traffic study was the movement that I think you're describing, which is the northbound to westbound left turn. The study found that might be necessitate an adjustment to the operation of that traffic signal to give more green time to that northbound to westbound left turn. But again, that was something that the traffic engineer recommended be reevaluated once we're out of COVID, because obviously right now is not a great time to take traffic counts while people are working from home and the kids aren't going to school. So that was the recommendation, was between phase 1 and phase 2, they take another look at that specific item, that operation of that signal, and specifically the northbound, westbound left turn, to see if more green time is necessary. And if it is found to be necessary, then that would potentially alleviate that backup that you're describing northbound Wixom Road.
It also shortens it for everybody else trying to, coming up Glengarry making a left. There's just not as much there.
And anytime you take, green time, add green time to one phase, you have to take it away from another phase.
Right. So some other questions. You said you had 5 home plans, 4 different elevations. Is that for each house? So potentially 20 different faces to the homes?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
The pathways you're putting in, are they going to connect up to the ones that are out there? So I know there's a pathway coming up the road. I'm not real sure. I'm assuming it's connected all the way up to potentially, I will say your potential property. It may not be in the, so are you going to connect these pathways, or are you only putting it around your property?
So the proposal, sir, is to put the frontage path along the property. And one of the requests that came up at the Planning Commission, which we agreed to, was to, instead of doing a 200-foot section from the internal roads out to Glengarry, would be to put in the 200-foot to fill the gap that's across that ITC corridor. There was quite a bit of discussion about that matter last night. We pulled the plan back up so you can know exactly where we're talking about. Neither of the Trillium Drive sidewalks nor the frontage path along Glengarry connect over. The road does, but the sidewalks don't. And so Mr. Campbell asked us if we'd be willing to trade that little 200-foot connection for closing that gap. And Pulte was very happy to do so long as there's some type of easement or road right-of-way in place that we can go within.
So that's on Glengarry. There's no potential to connect them up when you're running, what direction is it? South on Wixom Road. How far are you going to connect all the way up to that other development? From looking at the map, and I don't know, Dave, you want to bring up, but seems to be some private homes in there, and there's nothing there. And I just think from the township's point of view, someone that sits on the pathway committee, is that we just get all these developments that put in just on their property, and then we have holes everywhere. And then everybody complains that there's no pathway, and they think the township should be doing that. So how far out are you going on the Wixom side?
There are no off-site paths proposed. It's all frontage path and internal path.
So I hopefully just brought up an aerial view of the property. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
So the developer is proposing to extend the pathway all the way across their Glengarry frontage and then all the way down their Wixom Road frontage. To your point, Mr. Burkheiser, there is going to be a gap in this little neighborhood. Forget it, that's Silver Ridge, I think we call that. There is going to be a gap through there, and then the sidewalk pathway picks back up when you get down to Greenbrier. As Mr. Knowles mentioned, it was not a requirement that they do any off-site improvements. That's what this would be considered is an off-site improvement for Pulte to run a pathway across someone else's property. That would be a gap that the township might want to consider filling in.
Or Pulte.
So I have a question. Unless are you done, Bob?
No, but that's the pathways were the big. Oh, are the pathways going to be put in for phase one, or is that something you do at the end?
Yes, that's a good question. The pathways will be put in with phase one, as well as the screening along Wixom Road, including all of the mass grading and the utility tie-ins to the water mains, the gravity sewer tie-in that we'll be putting in will all be done in the first phase. In the second phase, it's just the internal roads and the utilities that service those second phase lots. So all the heavy lifting is done in the first phase, sir.
And I saw in the write-up to us roughly the size of the homes, but I missed it or didn't see. Do you have a price point? What do you think these homes will go for?
Yes, so the homes will range between 2,400 and 3,200 square feet. And we believe that we'll be offering the base in the high 300s. And we think that delivered price will be average around $450.
That's my last question. There you go. Thank you.
Rick, you had some questions?
So on some of these developments, when we use the smaller lots, we run into problems with parking. So how many cars in front of the garage and the driveway will there be able to park? Is it 1 car deep or 2 car deep?
That's a good question. So the parking, we've met all of the parking requirements. We've got 2 car garage minimum for every house, and then the driveways can accommodate 2 cars parked in the driveway. So each of the 78 homes can accommodate 4 parking spaces. The roads are built to Oakland County standards. They're going to be public roads. And so they're 27 or 28 feet back to back, which permits parking on one side of the road, obviously not in front of a hydrant or in front of a driveway. So, but there is some additional road parking, and we're comfortably over the parking requirements for this project.
So what I've experienced with the fire department is people tend to park on both sides of the road, and then the fire trucks and ambulances can't get through because there's not enough space. Have we thought of, Dave, possibly putting signs allowing only parking on one side to try to prevent something like that? Because this summer I know of a couple instances where the fire department actually could not get through because of excess, people parking on the streets.
It's not something that was discussed. It's not something that came up from the fire marshal's review or during the review from the planning commission. I would think that if that is something that becomes problematic, then maybe it gets reevaluated for installation of the signs once it proves to be problematic. I would think from an aesthetics standpoint, I don't know that having, this new neighborhood with these nice homes lined with additional, no parking signs is something we would want to do unless we know that there's a problem.
Is there, other than the street, are there any other areas where people can park?
Just the individual driveways, and then of course inside the garages.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask a question that Bob was kind of going to. Would Pulte be willing to connect the sidewalks, like going through the ITC path as well as going down Wixom Road?
We have agreed to do the connection through ITC. I think that, as a straight zoning project, and with the additional preservation and additional buffering and the component of offsite, I think that it's a fine development. I think that going and continuing, to continue to add gaps to this is not something that we would prefer to do.
Okay.
Was
And I
there
don't know
any-
if,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't know if Mr. Atkinson or Mr. Rentrop want to elaborate on that. Anytime you're pushing for off-site improvements, we want to be careful with seeking those.
The developer can offer voluntarily to do off-site work. We cannot require them to do it unless it's in the context of a PUD or some other zoning arrangement where there's an exchange of value.
Dave, we have some funds, or we're soon to have funds in an account for walkability improvements, maybe for Larry and for some others. So there are other developments that have been approved, and part of the conditional improvement would be, rather than putting a sidewalk in a place in the township that doesn't warrant it or doesn't need it, or is not as high a priority, developers have agreed to provide an amount into an account for us that is representative on what they would have had to spend in that. But we do have some funds available for us to prioritize where we think more paths or more sidewalks should be.
That's correct. In fact, just last night, Comcast got approval for their existing facility on North Commerce Road. If you can picture it across the street from the Methodist Church, they would have been required to put in 600 feet of sidewalk along their North Commerce Road frontage. If you look at that site, it didn't really make sense to add a 600-foot dead end section of sidewalk. So they were agreeable to, rather than actually building it, making a contribution proportional to what it would have cost to build it into a fund that we can then use to construct sidewalks where they make more sense.
Dave, do you know off the top of your head if there's space in terms of the right of way for constructing a sidewalk along that gap? Have we looked at that yet?
We looked at the Glengarry frontage through the ITC corridor, and it appears to me that there is dedicated right of way, which would hopefully mean the developer and the township wouldn't need any approvals from ITC. We did not look at filling in the Wixom Road gap out in front of the houses in the Silver Ridge neighborhood.
I looked at the map. It does look like there's right away on the Wixom Road as well.
So I will make a motion to approve PSU 20-06 special land use for the residential open space cluster option for the Oak Hills site condominium located on the southeast corner of Glengarry and Wixom Roads, subject to the conditions identified at the Planning Commission during their December 7th, 2020 meeting.
George, can I add some language?
Yes.
I'd like to add, we had some last minute discussions this afternoon on the master deed language. The attorneys are in agreement with that language. So I would like to move the motion to include an agreed upon change to section 6.10 regarding township liability, as well as subject to the general comments set forth in the attorney's December 2nd, 2020 letter, which are the sort of usual stuff, Giffords approvals, title to work, all is good, all that sort of stuff.
Motion to improve what the township attorney has included.
Can I ask just one quick question? I'm trying to read through the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting last night. Was there any feedback or comments really from the neighbors?
Just one, who then, and her comment had to do with construction traffic and limiting it to Wixom Road. She followed that up with a very complimentary email today.
And they were all notified?
Because it was a special land use for the cluster option, we did publish a notice in the newspaper. The developer did install a 4-foot by 8-foot sign along the Wixom Road frontage and the Glengarry road frontage notifying the special land use, and every property owner within 300 feet received a letter in the mail notifying them of the special land use. So yes, we did make an effort to notify the neighboring property owners.
How many did we send out? There can't be that many within 300 feet.
I don't have the count in front of me of how many property owners would have been within 300 feet. It's 300 feet of the entire perimeter of the subject property. But I would have to see how many letters actually went out. But as I mentioned, a big prominent sign on Wixom, a big prominent sign on Glengarry, and a notice in the Oakland Press.
Normally we just hear more feedback than that, so maybe that's a good thing.
We did get a fair number of phone calls from residents, primarily of the Hills of Loon Lake neighborhood, but also residents of some of the other homes in the vicinity, and answered a whole lot of questions, but didn't, as far as the public hearing, we just got the one email for the public hearing.
Okay.
Will this have a homeowners association?
Yes, sir.
So with, so what do I want to say here? As far as whatever issues that might have to be taken care of, I mean, you're not supposed to park on the roads in the township, so public road, they're not supposed to be there. But assuming they wanted to put signs and things like that, is that something the homeowners association would take care of?
Yes, the homeowners association would take care of something like that. The homeowners association is primarily, as you pointed out, public roads, public sewer, public water. So they won't be taking care of that. The storm system is private for the rear yard, public for the internal roads. So there'll be a basin maintenance responsibility for that homeowners association, as well as the common area upkeep. In the preservation areas, that's more like keeping people out. And in the landscape areas, it's keeping everything up with the lawn mowing and the maintenance of the plants and that type of thing. So yes, the association will be paying into dues, and they'll have funds for that. And signage, if it becomes required because it becomes problematic, is a very small amount compared to the overall homeowners association budget.
Will there be streetlights?
I can't remember. I think there might be one at the entrance, but they're not internal throughout the neighborhood. There may be one at the entrance. There's definitely two on the entrance sign. Those are shown on that rendering that I showed earlier, but I can't recall if there's a pole mounted street light there.
It's not something that we require from the township side.
Did we have a support on George's request? Motion?
I did.
Molly did.
Okay.
Yeah. Just making sure we were done with discussion.
Yep.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
I begrudgingly.
Magner,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Gray,
Nay. Okay,
Motion carried.
motion carried.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration and support.
Thank you.
thank
All
you.
right, on to item number 6, contract awards and agreements. Resolution authorizing interlocal agreement for Oakland County to approve the designated assessor for the period of January 21st through December 31st, 2025. Hans, did you want to go through this?
Sure, I can address it briefly because I'm sure everyone's very interested in assessing and the assessor's position, but basically the law has changed because some communities are small enough that they don't they sometimes have problems with their assessing functions. So the law was amended to require that a community fails to do certain things and keep it up to date that they could have a designated assessor appointed. As a result of that, all communities that do assessing have to have a designated assessor appointed. In our case, we use Oakland County Equalization to do our assessing. Oakland County is the assessor, and they're designating David Heber, the director of Oakland County Equalization, as the designated assessor. It is basically the only reason he would have to act is if he screws up. So his department screws up. So, and there's no cost to us. So I don't see any issues with it. The agreement itself does have the time of year typical kind of language we often see from Oakland County, which is I don't always like, but much of it's statutory. And given that there isn't a cost and we have to have it, it seems like the best option for the township. So it would be our recommendation you approve it.
So this isn't changing our contract,
No, it is not.
like dollar wise or whatever. This is just appointing, if that's the right word, this guy our assessor.
That's correct. We're entering an intergovernmental agreement with Oakland County to do this function. But they are basically tagging it along to their existing contract we have for the assessing function.
So does the contract run out at the same time this now? So whatever, 2025?
I don't recall actually what the assessing contract is. I would presume so, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so they're not necessarily attaching them, at least that they're not matching up that way. Okay.
No, and if David Heber is substitute with somebody else, the contract does contemplated a different, the successor will be appointed, but I think that's unlikely.
I'll make a motion that we accept the resolution authorizing the interlocal agreement for Oakland County to approve the designated assessor for the period of January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2025, and authorize appropriate signatures.
Or,
Total support?
yes.
Roll call.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Thank you, Hans.
Yes.
Okay, item number 7, consent agenda. First on the list A is the 2021 meeting dates. In the packet you have for the township board meetings and the quarterly board meetings. You have the planning, excuse me, the planning commission dates.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Did you want to pull something out, Bob?
I'll just address it under other matters. It's not going to change the budget, so we're good.
Okay.
Okay, roll call.
Sobel,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. So that was for everything in item 7, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Item 8, adoptions. Ordinance to amend ordinance number 2.019 to be known as the Charter Township of Commerce Fee Ordinance 2.020.
So Hans, on this, is this, since we've looked at this, I know several times or periodically, but is this literally just that change in date that we're looking at this again? I didn't see any other changes.
No, that you are correct. This was introduced at your board meeting on November. It was approved. We removed the red line changes. So the only red lines you're seeing now are the dates. So there have been no changes from when you approved it, introduced it in November.
Okay.
Is there an easier way to find the changes in the fee ordinance other than us flipping through the 34 pages?
I can flag it somehow.
I don't know what the easiest, I don't know if a memo like page 15 and page 30, I don't know what the easiest way, but I was in the same place as George where I'm like, I know I'm missing something.
Well, I mean, we can continue to show red line changes from introduction to adoption. It's just that sometimes when we introduce something, we then have an addition later on, and we want to show you what those changes have made since it's been introduced.
Yeah.
And so, but I have no problem including a short memo or something like indicating where the changes are and what was changed in introduction and adoption. It's not a problem.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll
a lot
let
of
you
times-
talk about that internally to see who,
Yeah.
the easiest way to do it. Just a thought.
Yep. Well, sure.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance, fee ordinance number 2.020.
Support.
Roll call.
Who was the support on that? So
Weber.
Weber. You guys need to change your voices or something. Wagner,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Burkheiser,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay, item B, under adoptions. An ordinance to amend code ordinance to be known as code amendment ordinance number 1.050 International Property Maintenance Code.
Motion
Again,
to adopt.
Yep, sorry.
Go ahead, Hans.
No changes since introduced.
Okay.
Motion to adopt ordinance, code of ordinances to be known as Code of Amendment Ordinance 1.050 International Property Maintenance Code.
Support.
Support.
Roll call.
Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Burkheiser,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay. On to item 9, purchases. We have a purchase for the plow for the new dump truck. Mark, did you want to speak in reference to this?
Oh, yeah, just like to get approval for this. It's something that we need. Many a times I've been out by myself and I get the plow, then have to go back to the shop and get the salter truck. There's 13 areas that we plow and salt. So if it's under 2 inches, we take care of it. If it's under 6 inches, a lot of times we have to keep certain grounds cleared, like the township, the library, police station, fire stations, senior center, until the plow company comes in and finishes up. So it would really help to have this. So a lot of times I come in Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, after hours to take care of it. And it's a lot easier for me to take one vehicle, get it all done.
Mark, do we just have the one plow now?
Yeah, just one.
Okay.
So just
So you're looking for an 8-foot plow, right?
Yeah,
a couple of them, or at least one of them has 8.5 and all that. So you're talking about an 8-foot.
Yeah, 8 foot would fit in the garage doors easily. The single bays.
So are these bids, I'll say apples to apples? I mean, the first one from Angelo's talks about installing it and some supplies that add, I don't know, $500.
Right.
Clyde just looks like he's selling you a plow. Is he installing it? I mean, are we
they're
are we
all
buying the
supposed-
same thing?
They're all supposed to be installed at different types of plows. I can't remember what type the Clyde's selling us, but there's
Mark?
Westerns, there's a few other things.
Hey, Mark, can I interrupt you here, Bob, just real quick? So just so you know, I called all 3 of these places today, just to kind of, because I seen this nice bid we had from number 3, all listed out. So the first person, bid number 1, they have installed a new plow for $450 there. That does include the wiring kit, the adapter light, the snow deflector, and the kit bumper trim. I asked specifically in reference to that. The second, number 2 bid, if you catch, it says install demo plow. So that demo plow is no longer available.
No.
So that is gone. He said he could sell us a new plow, but that would be $5,700, and he probably would not be able to get a plow for 2 months because he's not able to get it. And number 3 said they had the plow, they can install it by December 18th, and all 3 of these folks will give a 2-year warranty on parts and labor for the plow and the accessories.
So we're looking at one of them that's, I don't know, 7,000, and the other one is 5,000.
Yeah, basically.
That sound right?
$5,300 after taxes.
Well, the first one.
Oh, we don't get taxed. Right.
So
The Angelo's
The
is
8 foot
top
and the
stuff.
install and all the stuff. So Angelo's the low guy is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, that's what we
Okay,
have now.
so I'll make a motion that we authorize the purchase of an 8 foot plow utilizing Angelo's supplies with an amount not to exceed, let's say, $5,200.
Is that a support?
Great.
Okay. Burkhalter,
Discussion.
Oh, sorry. Discussion.
So what was it budgeted and how much was budgeted?
I think we budgeted 8,000, up to 8,000 for this year on the budget. I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if Janet has it with her, but
Is this the current budget? Like
this-
21?
yeah,
Right.
it's
20 or 21?
2020, yeah.
The 21, the one we're in, that's almost done.
It's right now,
2020?
yeah. It's not
Or
for next year.
2021?
2020 is for this year.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Sorry about that. Roll call.
Burkhalter,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Magner,
Hi.
Sobel.
Aye.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. On to old business. The first agenda on old business, A, is ordinance officer. So I've been listening to the last couple calls we've had on ordinance officer. The last call that we had, the big discussion was around what type of hours, what type of position this position would be. So I made some changes to the job description that was passed out last month. And basically, it's the last section only. So now it's titled Physical Demands and Work Conditions. In there, what I did was I added some verbiage that I received. I sent an email out to all the supervisors in Oakland County to kind of see what type of salaries they pay, what their ordinance officers do. And I got some pretty good responses, and I got some job descriptions from them, which I thought some of their verbiage should have been put in here. One is the second one, which has physical ability to periodically lift, push, pull items weighing plus or minus 40 pounds, as well as climb stairs and ladders, bend, stoop, kneel, walk over uneven terrain when conducting inspections. The other one I added was work involves outside working conditions with exposure to adverse weather, dust, noise, and the like of incumbent and may be occasionally exposed to fumes and odors. And then in reference to the hours, the very last one, which I added, says extended workday beyond 8 hours a day and weekends are occasionally required. So talking with the other supervisors in the other areas, a lot of this position is used in a lot of different ways. There's really nothing set in stone. Some have this position do ordinance violation, building inspections, and sit on the ZBA board. Some of these positions are just part-time positions working 20 to 24 hours a week. Some of these positions are, again, part-time positions where they work 3 days a week, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So, and the other thing is that the pay range that I remember being discussed here seemed to be on the high end of what most townships are paying their surrounding us. So it seemed like most of these positions started anywhere from $18, $19 an hour to start, to where at about 3 to 4 years, you'd be at the type of wage that was discussed previously. So with that, and I also talked with Mr. James a little bit. He gave me some hours that's been spent in 2019. We spent about and if I'm, Jay, if I'm wrong on this, let me know, okay. We spent $40,000, which I had figured out to be, after figuring about $36 an hour is what we get charged, to be about 22.5 hours a week. In 2020 so far, we spent $58,000, which is about 36.6 hours a week. And again, I just took the total amount that Jay thought we spent, divided it by $36 an hour. So with that, I would just kind of like to
So,
but
I mean, I talked to Jay also today, but I think we need to be, I don't know the right word, but I'll say careful. Again, I know I think several people want to make sure we have the right person going out. We don't want to be too overly aggressive, maybe. In my mind, I don't want someone that's going to be overly aggressive. I would like to see coverage on, to me, this is not a Monday to Thursday job. We have a lot of stuff going on the weekends. We have a lot of businesses. And I don't know that I would, I'm going to say attack, but work on businesses right now. But in general, things come out on weekends and disappear again. So I think if we're going to try to be consistent, that we need to have coverage, whether it's spot coverage on a weekend, maybe not always the first weekend of the month, but maybe it's the third, the next, whatever, but some coverage throughout the week. And I mean, I think right now we have part-time. I think Jay told me that he's using some of his, help me out, Jay, his inspectors, because as they're going out to different sites, they're also applying the ordinance piece to it. I guess that's my feelings. I'm not sure what it is we're doing tonight. So are we just approving the job description and setting potential, I won't say salary, but whatever you want to call it, pay range? Are we authorizing it? What are we doing? I'm you know, Jay's contract runs, I guess it's a couple more years. I think he's willing to certainly do this within the contract, but I think he would prefer to get rid of it in his next contract. So I think it gives us a little bit of leeway to decide what we want to do. Jay, help correct me where I'm screwed up.
No, you're correct. And as I was telling Bob earlier today, you know, this all came up many months ago. I felt that the supervisor wasn't necessarily happy with the work we were doing in the ordinance side. And honestly, I told him I wasn't happy that we weren't fulfilling the needs or desires of what the township wanted us to do. So that's how we kind of got on the subject. There's a lot of other pieces that kind of roll into it. I mean, I'll be honest with everybody. It's not my favorite part of my job. I don't think it would be the favorite part of anybody's job, but it's something that needs to be done. And I think Bob's absolutely right, where it's got to be a good fit. The person's gotta be able to work with people first, and then you have to hold a hard line if you don't get results. Everybody, it does take a special person to do that. I believe I'm a little more too lenient than I am on the hard side, which hurts me sometimes and it helps others. But I did tell Bob, and I've always said this to the board in the whole, it's in my contract and I will fulfill my contract. Absolutely. But I got the feeling that the township wasn't necessarily happy with the ordinance work that was being done. And I do believe it takes a full-time person. And when I was talking previously with Dave Scott, you know, it seems like it makes sense to have a full-time person that's all they're doing and they're responsible for it all. And they reported directly to the supervisor. Now, Dave was very hands-on when it came to some of the ordinance stuff. And I'm not sure, I talked with Larry a little bit about it. And I'm sure he's still getting a grasp on how much that takes, but I don't know if he's going to be as hands-on or not. So I don't know if that would necessarily have to fall under the supervisor. But I guess in summary, I do believe you guys should have a full-time person doing it. Now I can do it and I can cover it with people, and I could even hire somebody full-time to do it. ultimately, yeah, I would like to probably get out of the ordinance stuff, maybe in my next contract. But if you guys want me to continue on with it, I will. Absolutely, I will. I started doing this when you guys asked me to help out, and I was glad to do it then, and I'm glad to do it now. I didn't feel like I was living up to what you guys were hoping for.
Well, Jay, I definitely didn't feel that way, so I'm sorry you felt that way. How much an hour do you charge us for ordinance?
It's different for the different people. So the ordinance officer themselves that goes out, I charge you $36 an hour. For the clerical work inside, I charge you the standard clerical. I think it's actually, I have to look up here on my wall. I think it's $40 an hour for clerical in general for the whole township.
Okay.
So yeah, so when we divided the hours by, or the total by 36, you get a rough estimate. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. The ordinance is busier in the summer, obviously, spring and summer. It slows down in the winter. So I don't know if that's something if you were to hire somebody full-time, if that would come into account, that maybe they would work a little more hours in the summertime and a little less in the winter. And it might be something that is the feel thing as to when they get started, they'll figure out, when they're going to be busier and when they're not.
So that's $70,000 if we use $36 an hour times 37.5 hours times 52 weeks.
That's not what the person gets paid. That's what
No.
Jay's making.
Right.
No, I understand, but from our standpoint, because we have benefits.
Okay.
So
Right.
we still need to decide if we want a full-time person, part-time person.
Right.
So Jay, so I guess I think maybe I have three questions. So the first is the dramatic increase in hours spent this year versus last year due to the election and due to signs?
That's a part of it. It was actually an intended thing when I brought it to you last year, was that we increased the budget intending to do more ordinance work. Now, when I first started doing this back 2013, whatever it was, 12, it was a go out when we get a complaint. We weren't proactive at all. We were just completely reactive. And over the course of the 7-8 years, we've kind of increased it more so we can try to be more proactive instead of just reactive. Signs obviously is part of it, yes, but it's not the whole reason why. We intended to do more ordinance work and to be out there more trying to see ordinance violations before we get the calls.
So how do you determine whether this should start as a full-time or a part-time? I mean, so if it's doing what you're doing now, it would not be a full-time job for the most part. If it's increasing ordinance work, then it would evolve into a full-time. Is that correct?
I would say right now we do it normally most of the year on a part-time basis, not full-time. Summertime, I would say we get closer to being full-time. But again, I kind of felt like you wanted more done as far as ordinance wise. And that's why previously when I talked to Dave, we were talking about a full-time person.
So to help me and maybe some others, how do we determine whether we're doing enough ordinance work or not? I get when the phone calls come in and I get when signs are not where they're supposed to be, but what would be some other criteria that says, hey, we're not doing enough? We're deficient in these areas.
Honestly, George, the easiest way is when you drive around the township. If you are noticing things that aren't supposed to be there, signs, RVs parked out, in the driveway through the winter,
junk cars in the driveway,
debris, piles of wood that aren't. If you notice that stuff, then you're not doing enough. And I notice it quite a bit. And So as I drive around doing inspections, I notice that stuff, and I will come back and try to address it when I get back to the office and remember which address it was. But I don't think there's any hard data. I know you George, you love data, and I know that, but I don't know how to quantify ordinance outside of the number of calls we get. If the calls are reducing, it means that people are more happy with what's out there, and so they're not calling us as much. But I don't have any, like, you're looking for numbers wise to look at it and say, all right, we're getting less calls, therefore we're doing a better job in ordinance. I really think it's as you drive around, if you're happier with the way the township is looking, I think your ordinance is doing a better job for you.
So James.
So one last question that I have, or question / comment, is I'm not. So one, I am definitely open to having the position of an ordinance officer. I think I like the idea of it, rather than having it report to the supervisor, having it part of our contract with Kerr Engineering. Because I think once we make it a township employee, it's going to be a township employee forever. Whereas if we start off with it being within amending the contract with UJ, then we can see how we grow into this, and whether we think it should be ultimately a township employee. And I know we had a little bit of this discussion, and Hans had commented on it, that it was, it did not have to be an employee of the township.
Right.
But that way it would also, again, I think to Rick's point, if we line item this out, and if we make it an added head to Kerr Engineering, then it's ultimately going to be a reduction in expense to the township. So it'll improve Jay's quality of life, and it will probably cost the township less money overall.
Yeah.
So Jay, in our conversation earlier, you commented that, or even now, you've said this could be a full-time job.
Absolutely.
But you also told me on the phone that we were really only doing it Monday through Thursday. So is this a full-time job Monday through Thursday? So we're really saying to cover Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're looking at potentially, especially in the summer, maybe 1.25 FTEs for the summer. And you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to gather whether it's really a full-time position, or if we're really saying it's a position and a quarter or a half, depending on what's needed to cover. I think we should be covering weekends.
I think it's a full, and when I say full-time position, I'm thinking 40 hours a week, or I guess in the township's case, 37 and a half, throughout the course of the whole year. Yes, there are times where I go out on weekends. I'll do stuff on the weekends. I'll pick up signs. I'll go look at other ordinance complaints. Like I told you, Bob, I go out at night and meet residents to look at lighting issues to see if the neighbors' lights are shining in their yards. I've done a lot of that. So yes, there are after hours stuff. But when I say full-time, I'm just looking at, on average, full 40 hours a week.
So if we had 2,000 hours a year in there, and actually that might be what the number adds up to, that could be split however needed throughout the year to cover the whole week.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Hans, do we still have a specific day in Novi Court for civil infractions?
No, they're just done on normal prosecution days. I will offer this. I know, Rick, you remember this. I'm not sure how many others do, but the township did have an ordinance enforcement officer full-time at one point in time in the late 2000s. Jay is absolutely correct. It takes a certain personality to do, and the data is very difficult, because one of the issues you get into, and I hesitate to bring this up, but I think it's worth noting, is that by having an officer, you don't need an officer. In other words, once you have an officer going out there and doing all the inspections and being enforceable, word gets out, people get understanding, and all of a sudden things start coming together and people stop start complying. For example, I think that you would likely find that if you had someone working on the weekends and picking up, illegal signs, that eventually those people are going to stop putting the signs out, and then there's nothing for that individual to do. So it's kind of a catch-22 in many aspects. And then if you have an officer, sometimes an officer is trying to look for something to do to justify their position. So I don't know that I've provided any solutions, but I did want to provide you the information on it.
So Jay, is your staff how many hours a week are they putting in to answering phones maybe, or I don't know what else is done in this process, whether there's administrative stuff that has to be done.
There's a lot of administrative stuff that gets done. So
is that being done by building department people, and is it being charged to ordinance, or is it taking away from building?
Well, it's done all at the same time. I mean, all the calls come at once,
Okay.
But yeah, we charge you, my clerical staff will charge, they try to, just based on how many calls they get,
right.
They may charge an hour, they might charge 2 hours a day. I would say on average, there's 3 girls full-time. I would say on average, they charge 3 to 5 hours a week each, maybe doing clerical. 2 of them are mostly doing counter help and phone assistance. Judy kind of handles the more important stuff as far as letters going out, tickets being written, notices going out, correspondence back and forth with the attorneys if need be.
So would that be done by an ordinance person?
That could be done by an ordinance. There would be some administrative staff that would be needed. Absolutely. It can't all be done by one ordinance person.
So Jay, if we already contract with you to do code enforcement, ordinances enforcement, why do we need to modify the contract to have you do what you're already doing?
We don't. It's in there.
You don't. Absolutely. If you want me to keep doing it, I'll do it. I've said that all along. I'm not trying to get out of it. It was the impression that you weren't happy with what's being. If you guys are happy with what's being done in the ordinance department, maybe this is a moot point for a couple of years.
I think it's worth moving forward. We have new leadership. I think we should move forward the way it's been, and let's give it a few months and let's see what happens.
I think we need to, we like data. Certainly George and I like data. So if it's something that as it's moving forward, looking at that, your budget's, I won't say double, but whatever, it's up 25%. So we should be able to get full-time coverage on it to see what happens. I wouldn't want restaurants being tackled during all this stuff when they're trying to get as much business as they can. But, I like that you guys are reasonable, if that's the right word, trying to correct it by saying, hey, cut your grass before you go back and they have to write a ticket, that type thing. So
we do. And like I told you, Bob, I probably am too lenient. If I talk to a resident about an issue, if they tell me they're going to be working on it, or they're out of town, they'll work on it, they can't get to it for 3 weeks, I'm always willing to work with them first until they've lied to me. Basically, once you've lied to me, you're done. So I have no problem. If you guys want to continue with us, and if you're happy with the job that Kerr is doing for you, I will keep going. I'll be honest with you though, at my next contract, I'll probably ask not to be doing that anymore. It's wearing in many, many ways. And it wasn't something that I ever asked to do. I'm glad to do it and glad to help out. Don't get me wrong. But
and I guess I would ask that you, and maybe it's in your stuff, I have to go and look, but we need to have better info so that we know what we're jumping into. Whether we contract with someone else to do it or whether we hire somebody, we need to have an idea. It's a 60-hour-a-week job from, I don't know, June to October, and then it's a 30, that type of thing.
I can definitely get you the hours that we've historically spent monthly. The one thing, and I don't know if you're looking for this kind of data, is the number of phone calls we take or the number of people that come in and talk to us, because
if you're saying that you need a part-time, a 20.25 FTE, and that's an admin person, a phone call person, and you're not going to handle that piece to it. It's going to go to ordinance. Then it's really more than just an FTE for an ordinance. It's also an admin person to handle stuff. Or we share that work somehow. I don't know what we have in the township.
No, you're correct. There is administrative staff, and I guess previously the thought was that there was staff available to do that if you hired current township staff that would be helping out the ordinance officer. So
I'm gonna make a motion to table the full-time ordinance officer.
Support. I just have one question though for you, Jay. When is your contract up, just so we could kind of plan ahead as to when we have to start making other decisions?
2022, so 2 years.
Okay. At the end of 23?
No, it's the end of 22.
Okay.
So there's no discussion on a table. Just as a reminder, no discussion on a table.
Oh, well then I don't want to not discuss this anymore.
Roll call.
Who made the motion?
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. What is your motion? Not to have a full-time ordinance officer?
No, to table it. We just have no action?
To table it for now.
Well, why would we just do no action?
No action. Well, easier.
He doesn't want to talk about it.
That's fine too. I'm just trying to move us on.
Yeah. I'm good with no action.
Motion to table fails, no action.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, so if we're continuing discussion, Jay, so you don't want to do it. Is that you don't want to do it personally, meaning you don't want to be the ordinance guy, or you don't want Kerr Engineering to be involved in ordinance work going forward?
Ultimately, in 2 years, I will probably at this point recommend to you that you hire either an on-staff person or contract it out elsewhere.
Okay.
Like I said, it's wearing in many ways. Not just myself, but my staff as well.
Get us some data so that we can have more information to do this in the future, Jay.
I will.
So we want to move on to B underneath old business, Forest Farm.
I included this memo in because somebody had asked for an update and we went out and toured the site. This is a summary of everything that Jay and Mark and I talked about with Carrie when we toured the site, and basically gave us some next step action plans that we would like to. So one of them is to get the horse farm subcommittee back together for a meeting with Carrie so that we can get clear guidelines as to what's the township's responsibility, what's her responsibility. There's in some of the things Carrie brings up, there's still a little gray area there, so that needs to be hammered out. And then some of the improvements she wants to make that she knows are her responsibility, we think might be able to be handled by what we call the Friends of Windmill Farm group, which is all of the adults that came to the one board meeting. And we need to figure out some guidelines as to what they can handle without getting 4 bids or coming back to the board for approval, or if it's they're gonna reset some fence posts and supply all of their own labor and their own materials, do they really need to come to us, or do they just need to say, hey, we're gonna have 8 people resetting fence posts at the farm this weekend? So we need to hammer those things out so that we know where we're going, and then the next step is to get in contact with the Friends of Windmill Farm group and say, okay, these are the things that you can have at, and figure out if there's anything that any of the other like farm preservation and the Equine Preservation Act people can, give grants and things to get some things done, because nobody would touch it before she had a 5-year concession agreement, but people will consider donating money to something that, you know, might be still operating 5 years from now. So those are the next steps, and that's what we found. Anybody have any questions?
So it's more of a comment. I just think you said, I think we need to get together with the group. I would suggest we do it maybe twice, once without Carrie, because I think we're the landowners, and there's certain things in here that when I went through it are specific to me. That's not a township issue. But we've also, just as FYI, through Parks, we've asked for her to provide when we do it with everyone, what's your wish list? What is it you think needs to be done? And we've yet to get that from Carrie. So we've asked for that. It's been several times. And so I know Emily, she's probably on here, she is, so she could speak to it, but we're working, and she's going to follow back up with her. But I would suggest maybe next week, if we have a good time, get on a call and go through this, decide what's Commerce Township and and prioritize these things. I mean,
right.
For me, reading this, some of it doesn't look like a big priority, but it may be different for her.
Well, and to that end, I know Jay dropped off an aerial because Carrie's having some drainage issues, and she wants to put in a bleachers in the back part of the parking lot for the outside arena. And I know Jay dropped off an aerial view of the property so that Carrie can mark it up with where it's too low and where it's not draining and where she wants the bleachers to go and what fences need to be fixed. And last time I talked to her, which was Monday, she was working on that.
So I had a pretty lengthy conversation with Carrie today regarding all of these topics, and she does have the aerial done. She couldn't wait around. She just stopped in the office. She didn't make an appointment for Jay, and he was already busy. So she is going to get that over to him. I did touch base with her about the wish list again and explain to her the urgency that we get that. I'm hoping to have that in my hands by early next week so that hopefully the subcommittee can meet by the end of next week to kind of prioritize and take the gray area out and make it more black and white for the township and Carrie, and then kind of proceed from there. So that's our plan at this point.
I did correspond with Carrie today, actually. And she asked if I could come out and meet with her to kind of go over some of the stuff. She had some questions and stuff for me. So I told her I was hoping to do that possibly tomorrow if I can get out there.
All steps in the right direction.
Next. No discussion?
So I don't think there's any motion or anything to make on that unless somebody has any additional questions. And I think I see Carrie's number on the line if she wants to chime in.
Carrie, did you want to chime in?
Carrie, if you want to chime in, you would hit, what is it, *9?
*9 and then *6 to unmute. Which phone number is it? I can ask them. Oh,
it's the 4678.
There we go. So now it'll be *6 caller.
Hi, this is Carrie. Yes, I appreciate working with everybody to move forward with getting done what we need to get done. And I have a lot of ideas. And just, I think we are moving forward. There's just, I would appreciate meeting again with the group to make sure we're going the right direction and get the right things in place to make things happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
And I appreciate the opportunity to have input. Okay. And I'll look forward to speaking with Jay and Emily and Molly again coming up to work out any of these details.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Any questions? I can answer any questions.
No, my email, my note to the board was pretty long.
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
So anything else on the horse farm? Okay, now we'll close our whole business and move to item 11, new business. A, amendment of option to purchase library parcel to permit assignment by buyer.
I'd like to address this. I did send the board an attorney-client privilege communication on the subject. Commerce Downtown LLC is the entity that purchased the DDA property and has an option on the old library site. And they have desire to create a new entity, Commerce Downtown LLC 2, which will acquire the original entity's interest in the DDA property. And they're doing that because it enables them to get a baseline assessment and baseline environmental assessment, which gives them certain protections from possible liability related to the environmental condition of the property. And that can only be done before you actually acquire your interest in the property. So what they want to do is to align the ownership interest of the library parcel with that of the DDA parcel. There are no issues that we know of with the library parcel. And because the option to purchase is a cash deal, and because the ownership interest will be the same as they presently are, this is more an administrative matter in my mind than it is any other issue. And I have no objection to it. Do you have any
There's
questions?
no risks to us then in doing this.
No, not to the township on the library piece.
So Phil, the way you explained it makes it sound like it's now a new entity purchasing the library, and now they can do their environmental. If something was to come up, does that mean we lose the sale that's already been signed for?
No, the new entity will will be assigned the existing option agreement and will have the same obligations under that agreement that the current one does. So there's no change in that. They've always had the opportunity, because it is an option agreement, to walk away from the deal, but they'll forfeit the money that has gone hard. What this really is more of a tag-along matter in my mind to what's happening on the DDA side, where they are concerned about environmental issues. They want to have a baseline environmental assessment done, which will give this new entity comprised of the same ownership protection that they can't now get under the existing entity because they already own it. So I just don't see any downside. It's more of an administrative shuffle. We're dealing with exactly the same people, just with a new LLC.
This thing's screwy to me.
Any questions for Phil?
Mark, anything from your side, or is this? And maybe just as part of this, any update from Aikens as it relates to?
We will be taking the same thing in for our phase 2 purchase from Aikens, so that he can purchase it through Commerce Downtown 2 next week. Again, as Phil said, it is an administrative side for the options to purchase. We do have to deal with a issue on site that I think will come together, but we're working with Bruce in positive manner as a co-developer. So I think we'll be okay. Ultimately, everything should clean itself up.
All right, I'll make a motion to amendment of the option to purchase a library parcel to permit assignment by buyer.
Motion by Stoll. Molly, did you support?
Yep.
Support by Phillips. Roll call.
Stovall,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser,
No.
Magner,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay, number 2, board review alternate meeting dates.
The word December shouldn't have been in there, so ignore that.
Yep. So was anybody here to present this? No. So basically, board review was had a set date, I believe, Missy, tell me if I'm wrong on this, December 14th, to do the board review. What they're requesting with by this is to be able to fluctuate that date during that week of the 14th.
The original set date would be Tuesday, the 15th. So they're asking that it's spread out through the whole week if they need it.
If they need it.
For what reason?
COVID.
Mostly, yeah.
Well, they can do it on it all board. At least the one thing I read. Now I'll ask the attorneys, but there was something that came from MTA today or yesterday, and it talked about extending the ability to use virtual, and it included the board of review, so they should still be able to do it. It talked about signatures, and it said that it allowed them to come in on different days to apply their signature by appointment, I assume with you. So is there really a need to spread it out?
So I think that's kind of what this is, Bob, because instead of doing it in the one day, you're doing it over multiple days during the week, where people are coming in and signing and so forth. So instead of having,
If it's just for signature, that's fine, but I
It's
thought.
not just for signatures.
No, it sounds like they're holding the meeting on different days during the week. I just don't understand. Whatever. No attorney comment.
Well,
Are they holding it virtual, or are they planning on holding it in person?
They're planning on holding it in person. They spread out in July, and they can do it again because they have the full boardroom.
So I'll offer a couple of comments to Bob's suggestion. Number one is township business is excused, administrative business is excused by the Code of MDHHS protocols. At least that's the last instruction we had. Not all administrative stuff is. So whether this would be fall in that K or not, most likely not, but that's one thing to know about. Number two is if they do need to keep separation requirements, they still have to do all the usual COVID protocols as well. Number three is I think the sense is that because it's the board review, because they're looking for people are coming in pleading their cases to them, they feel that it's more effective to be done in person. And the final comment is, yes, it can be done remotely under the current, and I want to get into that in item 11D a little bit this evening yet. But under the current rules for remote meetings, all remote meetings are authorized through the end of this year. This is through legislative action of the amendment to the Open Meetings Act. After that point, you can only have them for certain purposes. Now, one of those purposes is a declared state of emergency or declared state of a disaster, as well as illnesses, sicknesses, etc. What that provision, health reasons provide is not entirely clear, but we presume it will include an ongoing COVID pandemic. So, but each board is going to have to adopt procedures pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, which is what's going to be in front of you on 11D here tonight, as to how to go forward with it. So the answer to your Bob question in short is yes, they can meet remotely. No, they don't like to do it. And if they aren't going to do it, then they do need to spread it out.
Well, I don't like meeting this way either.
No one does.
Whatever.
So do we need to take any action?
Yeah, we need to approve it.
we need to approve it. So
Motion to approve.
Support.
Support, Wagner, roll call.
Sobel,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Burkheiser,
No.
Gray.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Motion carried. Number C, WRC budget. Earlier we had a presentation. Can we get a
Move
motion?
to approve WRC budget.
Okay, by Burkheiser, support.
Support.
By Weber, roll call.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Gray.
Okay. D, underneath new business.
So you've had a sneak preview of it. Like I said, under the new amendment to the act, you have to adopt procedures to move forward with it. These procedures are taken pretty much from the act and MTA's interpretation of that. It is not by proving this resolution, these procedures, you're not obligated to meet by remotely, but you are enabling yourself to do so.
Is it through March 31st now? Is that the latest I saw?
That's what I had heard too. That's what I was.
Yes, that's what I saw.
All right, I guess I need to ask a question because that was news to me. The act, in my recollection, was just through the end of this month, and then there's provisions for certain conditions thereafter. My understanding was it was a statutory act, so I don't know under what authority would you be able to do it unless the legislature's amended it to go to March.
I heard the legislature, well, either maybe they haven't done it yet, but I heard they were looking at going until March.
That would make sense.
So with this policy, is this all this is a policy on how we're conducting electronic meetings?
Correct. By enabling adopting these procedures, you're allowed to do it consistent with the act. And the other thing this resolution does, there's two things it does. One, it adopts the procedures under the Open Meetings Act to allow these remote meetings. Number two, it also ratifies all decisions made during the executive order period when we were meeting remotely. As you know, the Supreme Court ultimately determined that those orders were not valid, so we want to ratify our decisions in that. This seems a prudent thing to do at this point in time.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing electronic meetings and attendance.
Support.
Wagner, roll call.
Magner,
Aye.
Burkhalter,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Oval,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
I should let you know too, just on this topic, that we'll probably be taking similar procedures to the other boards and committees. I'm assuming that's the direction that the other boards and committees would take this same approach. Try to do as much as we can, one size fits all for planning commission, ZBA, parks, everybody else.
But why wouldn't the policy that is township wide, why wouldn't that just be the way they do it?
Two things. One, this is specific to the township board. And we try to make it a broader adopt one policy fit all. When we tried to draft it, it didn't work. So we just backed it off to go into the procedures, but we thought you should review it and adopt it first to make sure you're good with its general terms. And then we're going to take it to each committee, in part because planning commission has to adopt it on its own. It also has different precisions. It's just, it didn't, when drafting, it didn't work with one size fit all.
Thank you, Hans. E, order control study. Jason.
Yes, this agenda item is a proposal to perform an odor control study. It's in the area shown on the map in your packet. It's an area where we've received several complaints over many years, and we continue to receive them sporadically, especially in the area directly across from the hospital, the area along Tamworth Road and near the Hayes Creek pump station that's just south of the 7-Eleven. So this is an area with high hydrogen sulfide because a large force main with 6 upstream pump stations pumps into this area, and then it flows into a gravity sewer. So we've tried several things like installing a new drop connection near the hospital as part of the rehabilitation project. We've performed more frequent cleaning to wash out accumulated rags. We've sealed manholes, and we've also installed carbon filters at the vents at the pump station, and also sealed off hatches in that area. And these attempts have seemed to lessen the odors, but we still get complaints. We're recommending that a study be performed to analyze what is actually happening in this section of sewer and to provide recommendations of alternatives to permanently remedy the situation. Some of the initial thoughts are to see if chemical addition or possibly a filter that draws air out of the system would be beneficial in this area. The study would model the system as it actually functions, and it would tell us the optimum location where adding chemicals or removing air would create the biggest impact. We'll also prepare a cost analysis of these alternatives. So this project was planned for in the capital improvement plan that UFS used to create the rate study in 2017. It would be funded through the sewer fund at a cost not to exceed $65,100. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this.
So Jason, what would it cost to put the air extraction system in?
It really depends on the sizing, but you're probably talking a couple $100,000 at least to put a air system in the ground with power that filters through a media. It would be an underground system.
So that's kind of the worst case scenario, right? Putting in that kind of a system.
It might be one or two of those. I am not sure. That's one of the things that we need to look at. Just drawing air out by the pump station would seem like it would work, but how far upstream does that air get drawn out? And then what is the cost analysis of using chemicals for the foreseeable future would be the other alternate, and installing an injection system in the sewer line.
So when you say we have multiple over the years, so I'm looking at $65,000 to do the study and then another couple $100,000 on top of that. So we're somewhere in $250,000 to $300,000 by the time we're said and done. So I'm trying to understand the magnitude of the issue. I'm in that area a lot, but I also don't live there. So maybe I've just been on lucky windy days or something. But it says several. What's the volume of complaints?
This year there was a few more because we were doing the sewer rehab project. So some of the manhole rims were off. So this year was obviously worse. But there's been areas right across. There's been 2 homes right across from the hospital. One lady has a rental tenant that actually moved out because of the smell. A new person just moved in south of the pump station, and they've been calling the township, us, and they've actually spoken with Jim Nash at the Water Resources Commission to figure out what we're going to try to do to resolve this issue. In addition, along Tamworth, it's sporadic. That's why I don't know what the solution is, because there's 6 pump stations upstream that pump into this system, so they turn on at random times and they create different air pressures in the system. So it's really to alleviate the concerns of the residents along this area who have asked us what we're going to do about it, and we've tried as many alternatives as we can. So I think running this model would at least give us some direction, and it's not an emergency, but it does answer the residents that have been calling on this question that we are doing something about it.
So Jason, when you say run this model, are they actually coming to do a study? Are they going to do different things physically here, or are we building a computer model? And if that's, and then with either one, you guys have tried a lot of stuff. What's the likelihood that $75,000 later or whatever, 65, that we have an answer, and then we spend 200,000 and then we still have complaints? So, well, I don't want to spend $250,000, and I don't mean this to sound bad, but to be able to tell the residents we're trying something.
Understood, and I understand that the study is expensive. Over 50,000 of that is a consultant who's an expert in odor control and ventilation and sanitary sewer systems. So in the letter, I wrote some of the specific items they would do. They're going to install monitoring equipment over a period of several weeks, I believe it was. We're actually going to hook fans up to draw air out of the system while those are in the sewer system to see how that affects it. And then ultimately it is to create a model that's a proprietary model that's available to purchase, but they are experts in running it.
So it's our model. So we're spending this, so we're getting this model and we can sell it? Is that what you mean?
No, I'm saying that it's a program like AutoCAD, or it's a program that actually measures the dispersion of odors based on the air in the sewer, in the hydraulics of the air. So we will get a report that summarizes the different alternatives along with a cost benefit ratio that would say, you know, to your point, if it's a $200,000 underground system that has a fan compared to just installing a chemical treatment at the upstream area.
Have we reached out to other townships across the, I don't know where you would look for this sort of thing, but
I think it's
you can't necessarily compare one. Okay.
We could just, that's what I don't want to do is just come here and say, yeah, you need a biofilter at the pump station, or you need a biofilter across from the hospital, and spend $200,000 and find out it doesn't work. And $200,000 is a guess. I mean, they're fairly expensive, but I just don't want to throw money at this and then not have it work.
So does this guy have references? I mean, he does this. Has he been successful in other places?
Yes, they've done work for Macomb County, the OMID system. They've installed biofilters along that system. We've worked with them within the last 5 years on systems like that. They're the experts to go to in this field.
Okay.
So do they guarantee a solution? Meaning, knowing that each one is different, is it, what wasn't clear to me is will the outcome of this study say, if you do this, it will solve it?
I believe so. And obviously we can solve anything with enough money, but the solution might be that the fan is so huge that it doesn't make sense. And we can say that, you know, we put every effort into trying to solve this. It's just a sporadic issue that is something that we're going to have to deal with as the complaints come up.
Will the reserve at Crystal Lake, the extension of the sewer system out there, have any effect on this? And should we, if we do the study prior to that, is there a risk that, well, or not if we do this, well, I guess if we do the study and or implement a solution, will that change what's happening?
I don't think it would change it enough to affect, because there's obviously going to be some safety factors in here. We're going to show them, we're going to provide them with a model of the entire sewer system, including what would be proposed. So that would be something that we can show as proposed on the model and with an approximate flow in it. So while it might not be the situation that's there today, they can add the flow in and have that pump turning on at certain times, just to model different characteristics of the sewer system.
So extending the sewer system would not do anything to alleviate the odors that are happening up by the hospital?
No, because all of those force mains dump into a gravity sewer that's right there, and that's okay. It's force mains dumping into the gravity. That would just add more flow into the gravity sewer, or that would add more flow into the force main that flows into the gravity sewer, and we would model it with ultimate flows. So yes, we would take into consideration future connections to the system.
So you're going to ask us to add $65,100 to the orders? No, forget that.
Not till January.
So is this?
We can wait till next month if it's not something that needs to be, it's not an emergency, like I said.
Well, which budget is this captured in when we had it, the $75,000 included in the?
This is from the sewer fund, and I don't know specifically which budget it's in, but it's part of the capital improvement. It's separate from the Water Resource Commission budget and the numbers that you have in the township. It's the capital improvement plan.
So there's no benefit to spending it in December versus spending it in January?
No, because all of this is going to go to Dawn to look at anyway.
So Jason, does it make a difference if this is done in the summer months versus the winter months?
That's a question we ask them. And yes, the ambient outside temperature does play a small effect on the dispersion of the odors, but it's something that they can model in their system. So they'll model the weather in this area. It doesn't change the actual temperature of the sewer by a lot.
just as an aside, we don't budget revenue and expense for the sewer department or the water department, other than approving the operational budget for WLC. So there is no budget line item that it comes out of specifically for the year.
It's just built into the information Dawn uses to create
Right.
your rates.
Right, but it's not like we've got $65,000 out there
Right.
that we were planning on spending, and it's in an expenditure line that hasn't been spent because they're all zero.
Correct.
Any other discussion? I see none. So,
Make a motion to move forward with the odor control study at a cost not to exceed $65,100.
Support.
okay, motion Wagner, support Phillips, roll call.
Wagner,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Weber,
Aye.
Burkhalter,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay, moving on to item 12, orders. I don't see anything there. So we can move past
Motion
that.
to approve orders and add-ons.
Okay.
Support.
Discussion. There was a strange one that popped up. It was Tokyo Marine Public Risk Claim for $2,500 to John Galvano, and it said insurance.
It's an insurance company.
Yep, yeah. Without getting into too much detail, because I don't know what I can say is it was for us to pay a deductible on an insurance issue that we had.
Okay, got it.
And I had a question on one too. And I can't remember what the heck it is. It looked like it was a training thing. Chief, did you have a training set? Because it just seemed like it was weird. Shoot, where the heck is it? It was like $6,500 for some training rescue. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, so last year we implemented putting some of our guys on a technical rescue team. That's a mutual aid team that we share with the rest of the county. So 3 of our full-time guys had some additional training for rope and trench and collapse rescue techniques. And that was just a bill that got overlooked until recently.
So $6,500 for the Michigan Urban Search and Rescue.
I don't have the bill in front of me, Bob, but that is what it's for.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Do we need to,
Magner?
Aye.
Sobel?
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips?
Aye.
Weber?
Aye.
Burkhalter?
Aye.
Gray.
Aye. Okay, other matters. Bob, Burkhalter.
So the one thing I had, and it's just more of a comment, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I just think maybe it's a question. But with the approved now 2020 budget, the fire fund fund balance is now about $400,000 less than what we used to project all our numbers when we were doing SAD stuff and fire truck stuff and all that. So it's more, I guess, informational. And I'll replug numbers, maybe get with Chief just to relook at it, and for next year, or start in January, just so we can look at it. I don't know what that's going to do to affect anything, but it's just more of an FYI. I just noticed that the numbers we used were roughly, I want to say 1.4 million, and it's now the numbers we just saw, I don't know, we're 900,000 or something in that ballpark. So it's more of an FYI, I guess.
So we're still expecting some significant money to come in from FEMA on our SAFER grant. And that I'm expecting that money any day.
That SAFER grant money was something you already were expecting, correct? I mean, it's not additional money than what we knew when we looked at it before.
You're right.
Oh, so you're saying, well.
We haven't gotten it yet.
So which number?
What we already.
So we planned on getting it. We knew there were delays, but and maybe, I don't know if this is a question, I'm not sure who it's a question for, but if the SAFER, with the numbers that we just saw, did that include the assumption that the SAFER grant money hits by the end of this year?
That was what we originally laid out, yes.
So it's possible then that will add up the other 400,000 or something.
Oh, so I see Janet popped in, so I'm assuming hopefully you have some words of wisdom for us.
So what was your question, George?
So we had anticipated that the fire fund end of year balance would be approximately 1.4 million. And the budget amendment that we just saw today has it less than $1 million. So my question is, are we assuming in that $1 million that the chief gets all of the SAFER grant, which chief was how much? Was roughly 350,000? How much was that SAFER grant?
So we got some money from it already. We're expecting another payment of about $300,000 before the end of the year.
So the question then, Janet, is the 900 or is the $1 million that we saw in the amended budget, does that include the $300,000 SAFER grant monies that we have not yet received?
Yes.
Okay, so do we know what is there one slug of money that caused this delta between the 1.4 and the $1 million? That Chief or Janet is aware of?
Well, if you remember my discussions with you guys, you guys were looking at a lot of this stuff. You were looking at August 31st numbers and assuming that that bottom line was what was going to feed into increase or decrease your fund balance. And you were missing, you had 100% of your revenues except the second half of the SAFER grant, but you only had 8 of the 12 months worth of expenditures.
Right.
So
and I thought we calendarized that. I thought we took that.
We annualized it, I thought.
I thought we did too. We tried to, because based on what you advised.
But your annualized budget started with the fund balance that you thought you were going to have at the end of this year from August 31st numbers.
Yeah, but I thought that after
you annualized your expenses to your next year's budget and what you needed to cover, but you didn't have the right opening fund balance, cash balance.
Yeah, I guess we'll show us. I thought we took that. I thought we tried to take that into consideration because you pointed that out to us.
I do think we made that correction.
I thought we did too. So maybe we're not gonna solve it tonight, and we've already approved.
No, it was more of an FYI. So,
it is. I think it's important to find out. Yeah, where is that? What happened to cause that extra $400,000? Just so we learn from it.
I believe we're also going to get some CARES Act money too.
Yes.
I'm
not exactly sure how much, but it'll be around 200.
Right, and I don't think we didn't budget for that, so that's going to be money that is in addition to our current budget.
Correct.
Bob, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, George?
Yeah, I've got a couple, and Hans, I might need your help, or Phil on this. I might have misspoke the number on the motion to approve the site plan for the Pulte. So it should be PSP 20-09. I think I might have misspoke. So I don't know if I need to amend that motion or we can make that as an administrative correction.
We can make that as administrative correction in that the item was being discussed at that time and you enabled the actual, the project. So.
Okay.
I'm not concerned.
So two other quick things. I see that we have Cascade Street is proposed to be on the agenda for next week. And I've read all the material on a few different times, but I'm just wondering if there's any additional historical information in the township that might be coming to us in the board pack, if anybody's aware of it, just so we could prep for that a little better. And the final item is a question. Property taxes are based upon receipt, on whether they're on time, not based on postmark. So irrespective of a specific letter that came to all of us, just in general, I'm interested in Molly, what are the pros and cons from utilizing the postmark and taking any issue of the post office delays out of the equation?
The general problem we have had with postmark is that not all envelopes actually come with a date stamp on them. A lot of them just have a pink barcode going across, and without a barcode scanner that specifically reads that information, I have no idea what day it was mailed. That's one problem. Second problem is the law says, yes, you can accept postmark, but if the letter shows up 7 days after the postmark date, then you can call it late. So how am I supposed to tell somebody whose tax bill gets here with a clear postmark and it gets here in 6 days that theirs is on time, and one that gets here in 8 days is late when they were mailed on the same day? So it's just get it here. You can pay online. You can drop it in the Dropbox. If you have time to walk it into the Walled Lake Post Office, my guess is you had time to walk it into our office or put it in the Dropbox.
So again, one letter irrespective. It's just, if somebody comes to us
it's
and
not one letter, that's just the one that everybody got.
Okay. So so I guess maybe I'm trying to understand, how frequently does that issue come up then? Is it?
There are probably the same 18 to 20 people who pull it every tax season. Oh, and I would just like to say one other problem when we get to the end of tax season when we cut off on March 1st and we send everything to the county, I can't start doing my settlement with the county and paying out to our departments until we are closed, locked out, and done settling. And the 2015, we accepted postmark, which was was the 2014 tax season for 2015 collections. And we were like the last municipality to get settled from Oakland County because we had things dribbling in that had postmark on them. So in July of 2016, I got the board's authority to say no. So we don't take them anymore. And there's always going to be the few who think that they can. We had one guy say that he put it in the Walled Lake Post Office on the 14th and that should be good enough. And it's like, well, it wasn't here. So.
Same with the elections. You have it in on time or your vote doesn't count.
That's all I've got.
Unless you're in Detroit.
Mr. Sobel.
So first of all, good job on your first meeting, Larry.
Thank you.
And I will be in touch with you probably the next few days. We need to, for January, start the process for the Lower Straits Lake aquatic weed, that whole ordeal. I know you were probably listening in on those meetings, but I'll share all the documents that I have and everything with you, so we can start that process because you're in charge of it.
Okay.
So Rick, since you brought it up, are we still using the same guy or do we make the decision that we're going out for bid?
So we are going to go out to bid. Dr. Pullman is still doing it, despite the rumors we had that he's not. Jeff Knox is also the applicator, still doing it. But this is where we need to put in place the time frame, because I believe the permit has to be done in the next couple of months, and there may or may not be time to go out for bids for this first year. That's why I want to get on, reach out to Larry and get this going right away.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, Vanessa.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, Molly.
I got a couple. One question is, do we know what's happening with 3400 Union Lake Road? I know that the person that's the parcel that we bought last year. On, what is it, Gibson? But I know we sent a letter to the people next door saying their fence was on our piece of property and they were needing to take it down. That obviously hasn't happened. We were supposed to, you know, get bids on demolishing it and all of that kind of stuff. And, you know, it just is sitting there vacant, like a very attractive nuisance that people could vandalize or, you know, something. So that's one question is, where are we headed with 3400? Next question is, or actually a comment in the last, I think it was the last board meeting, you all had asked Mark, Stacy, and I to look at the wall projection for when the township might run out of money for funding the DDA debt. And Mark and I had a Zoom conference with Keith Szymanski at Plant Moran, and he actually sent us his calculating worksheet that shows how much money the township's going to have to front based on certain assumptions with build outs and things like that. And Mark and I had him make it worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and we never get to the point where the township has to put in, I think one year it has to put in $3 million instead of $2 million into the debt sinking fund. But what's already in there plus $2 million a year, if we continue to do that, we should be okay. So if you want us to present that at the next board meeting and show you how the numbers work, then we can do that. And the
So Molly, should we gradually add it, like add 2.25? I don't know, and so that it's not such a big hit. What is your thought?
I don't think it matters, because once all the debt for the DDA has been covered, then that money can be, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, that money can be brought back into the general fund by resolution. It doesn't have to sit out there for debt that's no longer needing to be extinguished. So it depends on what else the township has going on. You're talking about fronting money to the fire department for the station and some other big things. So I think as long as we can commit to doing the 2 million each year, we might have to have one year, and I don't remember whether it was 2023 or 2024, but there's one year in the middle there that some of the debt is front loaded because it's the last payment year for a couple of them. But we can look at that. It kind of goes to the budgeting process. So something for the back burner for next year.
Maybe we just include that. I mean, say, do you want to just include that in the next quarterly discussion meeting? Would that be at an appropriate place?
Whatever, yeah. And look at and we can run numbers, and you can say, what if this doesn't happen, and what if this does happen? And so it's really kind of a cool spreadsheet he's set up. And my last question was, we still have the temporary fencing with the green stuff over it at M5 and Pontiac Trail. Is that ever going to be upgraded to some other screen other than chain link with green stuff over it? Anybody know?
I'll take a stab at that one. The fencing that's there is meant to be the upgrade. If you'll recall, what they did have there for a couple seasons was the orange snow fence with like a black fabric tarp over it. We had several conversations with the Michigan Department of Transportation and with the Road Commission to do something more significant and more aesthetically pleasing than the chain link fence with the green tarp. But to do anything, with any kind of like a brick or masonry, then that created safety concerns. To do anything with landscaping, then someone would have had to bring irrigation into those medians, which was going to be very expensive to do. So after a lot of conversations, the compromise was to do what you have out there now, which is the green fence.
Yeah, okay.
Arborvitae. That
Again,
stuff grows like crazy.
You got to get it watered though, at least early in its planting, and there's no irrigation in those islands.
And when somebody slides into it and you have to replace it, you got 1 10-footer and then you got a 5-footer.
And the salt from the road, the ice, or the salt.
No, that's true. Yeah.
No, the salt spray, that was a big thing, but that fence gets run into, I think, pretty much every winter. So it's, I guess, easier to replace a chain link fence than it is to replace a bunch of arborvitae or any other landscaping.
Yeah, okay. I'm good.
Hey, Molly, I'll stop by tomorrow and maybe you can fill me in a little bit on 3400 Green Lake Road.
Okay.
All right, cool. Melissa.
I have nothing.
Okay. Me, I really don't have a lot. I want to say I enjoyed my first 3 weeks. I'm learning a lot. Please keep throwing stuff at me. That's the quickest way I learn. And I really appreciate everybody who has helped me out so far. I know Missy's getting sick of me knocking on her door, but I gotta go down and bug her quite a bit too. So, but I just want to thank everybody, and as we move along, this will be a lot easier. So, anything else?
Nope. Nice job, Larry.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Get a second.
Support.
How about a roll call?
Burkhalter,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Gray.
Oh, aye.